Chapter 21. After Li Zixuan chatted with Han Lijing for a while, he saw Han Yushi and Iron Egg coming in with dishes. "Young master, young miss, father, it's time to eat." Han Yushi placed the dishes on a square table that was very old but very clean. She smiled and called for everyone to eat. "Young master, young miss, sit down and eat." Han Lijing quickly greeted. "Well, Uncle Han, you don't have to be so polite. Sit down too. Miss Han, you have worked hard cooking. Come and sit with Iron Egg," Li Zixuan said. Han Yushi was a little hesitant, but Iron Egg was very happy. He had been drooling over the pheasant meat on the table and the chicken that Li Zixuan brought over. He had not eaten meat for a long time. When he saw the golden and crispy chicken, he could not control himself. Just now, he wanted to stretch out his hand to steal a bite in the kitchen several times, but he was discovered by his sister and was chased out of the kitchen. Now that he heard Li Zixuan invite him to eat together, he could not hold back anymore. He lifted his foot and was about to walk over, but Han Lijing glared at him fiercely. He was so scared that he immediately retracted his foot. "Young master, you and young miss eat first. There is still food in the kitchen. Iron Egg and my daughter can eat in the kitchen." Although Han Lijing also wanted his son and daughter to eat together, the Li family was a great benefactor to the Han village. This time, the young master and young miss could come to his house for dinner. He was also very happy. He specially asked his daughter to stew the pheasant that he was going to sell yesterday to treat the guests well. At this time, he could not be rude. "How can this be? We came to Uncle Han's house to eat. Uncle Han, you did not charge us for the meal. How can we steal the limelight at this time? If Miss Han and Iron Egg do not eat together, we will not eat this meal." Li Zixuan firmly disagreed. He saw how Iron Egg looked at the table and drooled just now. He could not help but sympathize with the people of this era. They might not even be able to eat meat during the new year. Li Zixuan's abilities were indeed limited. He couldn't make the people of the world live a good life, but he could still make Iron Egg's family eat a good meal. Another reason was that it was indeed a great pleasure to be able to eat at the same table with such a beautiful woman like Han Yushi. Of course, our upright Li Zixuan would never admit this reason even if he was beaten to death. Han Lijing was helpless. He could only nod at his son and daughter. "Since young master is kind, come and eat with us." Iron Egg cheered and immediately sat in the empty seat next to Lanner. Han Yushi smiled gratefully at Li Zixuan and sat beside Han Lijing, which happened to be opposite of Li Zixuan. She was not greedy, but she also hoped that she could let her little brother eat meat. Only then did the group of people take their seats and start eating. At this moment, Han Lijing suddenly patted his head as if he had thought of something. He stood up and said, "I haven't brought the wine for young master. Young master, there isn't any good wine in the countryside, but the fruit wine made by my family's Yushi tastes quite good. I'll bring it for young master and young mistress to try." Then, without waiting for Li Zixuan to refuse, he ran into the inner room to get the wine. Li Zixuan originally wanted to refuse. He did not drink. Later, when he heard that it was just fruit wine, and it was made by Han Yushi herself, he hesitated. Seeing that Han Lijing went in to get the wine without waiting for him to speak, he did not say anything. Instead, he was somewhat expectant. After a while, Han Lijing came out with a wine jar. He said to Li Zixuan, "Young master, this is the fruit wine made by my family's Yushi. It is made with wild strawberries and hawthorns on the mountain. I'm not boasting, but the taste is really good. Yunshi Restaurant buys this wine every year in Chang, a city, at a high price of 10 copper coins per caddy." As he spoke, he poured a bowl for Li Zixuan and the others. "Father, Iron Egg also wants to drink it." Iron Egg licked his lips and looked at Han Lijing eagerly. Obviously, he must have drunk it before and still could not forget it. Han Lijing glared at his son angrily. Li Zixuan hurriedly said, "Uncle Han, since Iron Egg wants to drink it, let him drink it. We can't finish so much. Well, this guy thought that Han Lijing carried such a big jar of wine for them to drink. In fact, Han Lijing also knew that such a big jar of wine could not be finished by Li Zixuan and the others. He even planned to take the rest to the city to sell. However, when he heard Li Zixuan's words, it was even harder for him to explain anything. He poured a bowl for his son and daughter and said, "Since young master said so, Yushi, Tai Dan, you guys can accompany young master for a drink at noon." Iron Egg was very happy. He did not expect this young master from the city to be so easy to talk to. He was much more modest than the son of the landlord Lu. He was very grateful to Li Zixuan. How could he know that Li Zixuan was interested in his sister? Li Zixuan looked at the fruit wine in the bowl. It was bright red and very beautiful. He sniffed it gently and found that there was no smell of alcohol. Only then did he feel relieved. He picked up the wine and took a sip. It was sweet and sour, with the sourness of hawthorns and the sweetness of strawberries. It was much better than the fruit juice of the future. After all, the ingredients of this fruit wine were all natural and pollution-free. Li Zixuan smacked his lips and exclaimed in admiration, "Miss Han's winemaking skills are really superb. The taste of this wine is really great. If you ask me, I'd say that House Yunshi has made a great bargain by selling this fruit wine for 10 copper coins per caddy." Lan Er also took a sip and could not stop. This sweet and sour taste had a fatal attraction to children. When she heard her brother's words, she quickly agreed. Yes, brother is right. Sister Yushi, you are so good. This fruit wine is so delicious. Lan Er has never drunk such delicious fruit wine in her life. Li Zixuan was a little amused. This little girl was only 6 years old, and she still had the nerve to say that she had grown up. Han Yushi said shyly and modestly, "Young master and miss, you flatter me. Actually, this winemaking is very simple. These ingredients are originally some worthless things on the mountain. Yushi is already very satisfied to be able to sell it for 10 copper coins per caddy." Li Zixuan shook his head. He had an idea. If he slightly modified this mountain fruit wine, it would definitely sell well in the summer. He said to Han Lijing, "Uncle Han, do you know the Zuatian restaurant in Chang and West City?" Han Lijing nodded. "I know. I went to the West City yesterday, and saw that the Zuatian restaurant's business was very good. There was a long line in front of the door. I don't know what they were queuing for." Li Zixuan smiled and said, "To be honest, Uncle Han, the Zuatian restaurant is my family's business. Those people queuing in front of the Zuatian restaurant yesterday were precisely to buy this gnawed chicken." Li Zixuan pointed to the plate of gnawed chicken, and saw that there were only a few pieces of chicken left on the plate. It turned out that Iron Egg saw that the adults were talking happily at the side. After he tasted a piece of the golden gnawed chicken, he could no longer stop. While the few of them were talking, this brat wretchedly developed at the side and gorged himself on the food. Han Lijing was instantly furious. "Iron Egg, you little bastard!" After saying that, he stood up and was about to beat him up. Li Zixuan quickly pulled Han Lijing back. "Uncle Han, don't be impulsive. This gnawed chicken is not something valuable. I have a lot of it at home." Iron Egg ate it. "Today, everyone is eating happily together. Don't be angry." Li Zixuan persuaded Han Lijing for a long time before he finally stopped. Han Lijing sat down and glared at Iron Egg fiercely. When Iron Egg saw that his father was angry, he was about to run away. Seeing that Li Zixuan stopped his father, he didn't want to run away. He was a little embarrassed and whispered, "Thank you, young master." Lan Er was watching from the side and was quite interested. She said to Iron Egg, "Brother Iron Egg, what do you want to eat? Call me sister and I will get it for you. Then, your father won't be angry at you." Seeing that such a beautiful and cute little girl like Lan Er was talking to him, Iron Egg instantly blushed and said, "Miss Lan Er, you might not be older than Iron Egg, right?" Lan Er picked up a piece of chicken and stared at Iron Egg when she heard what he said. She shook the piece of chicken in her hand and threatened him. Iron Egg looked at the piece of chicken and swallowed his saliva. He had never eaten such delicious chicken before. After hesitating for a long time, he bitterly shouted, "Sister Lawn Air." Lawn Air smiled and replied, Brother Iron Egg, good boy." After saying that, she put the piece of chicken into Iron Egg's bowl. Iron Egg looked at the piece of chicken in his bowl and thought to himself, "It's worth it to call me sister." Li Zishuan ignored his little sister's nonsense and continued to talk to Han Lijing. "Uncle Han, as you can see, Drunken Immortal Restaurant's business is very good. In the future, if you sell fruit wine to Drunken Immortal Restaurant, we will buy it for 30 copper coins per caddy. We will buy as much as you have. You can also ask the villagers to go up the mountain to help you pick wild fruit. You can give them some compensation. After all, Miss Han can only pick a limited amount, and if there are wild beasts in the mountain, Miss Han won't be safe alone. Don't you think so?" Han Yushi heard that Li Zishuan was faintly concerned about her and felt happy for some reason. She lowered her head and ate without saying anything. When Han Lijing heard that Li Zishuan was offering 30 copper coins per caddy, his breathing quickened. However, after a while, he still rationally refused. "No, how can we do business like young master? Young master will lose money if he does this. We will sell the wine to young master in the future, but we will still only sell it for 10 copper coins per caddy. We, the people of the Han village, cannot do such an unkind thing." Alas, why were the people these days so simple? Li Zishuan said, "Uncle Han, listen to me. Since I dare to buy it for 30 copper coins per caddy, I will definitely not lose money. I will even make a lot of money. As long as Uncle Han sees that I have made so much money and doesn't regret it, it will be fine." Li Zishuan said half-jokingly. Han Lijing heard this and his face turned red. He stood up and said, "Young master, how can I, old Han, be the kind of person who goes back on his words?" Seeing him like this, Li Zishuan quickly comforted him. "Uncle Han, don't worry. I am just joking with you. I know that Uncle Han is a person who values loyalty. Uncle Han, there is a reason why I am offering 30 copper coins per caddy. Look, you hired the villagers to pick wild fruits for Miss Han. You can't not pay them, right? This is all part of the cost. This will also increase the income of the villagers of the Han family village." When Han Lijing heard this, he carefully thought about Li Zishuan's meaning. As Lijing, he naturally knew that the villagers of the Han family village lived a very poor life. Although compared to the villagers of other villages, it was still much better. However, he also wanted the villagers to live a better life. Li Zishuan's suggestion also moved him. After thinking for a while, he said to Li Zishuan, "Since young master is kind enough to give us a way out, then I, old Han, will represent the entire village to thank young master." After saying this, he stood up and bowed to Li Zishuan with cupped fist. Li Zishuan quickly came over to support him and told him not to be so polite. At this time, Han Lijing added, however, if young master loses money in the future, then the purchase price will automatically be reduced to 10 copper coins per caddy. At that time, the wages will also be reduced. When the time comes, I, old Han, will be responsible for persuading the villagers. Young master, if you don't agree to this, then this business deal will end here. I, Han Lijing, would rather starve to death than harm young master." Li Zishuan could only helplessly agree. This Han Lijing was really too straightforward. Chapter 22. After talking about business, Li Zishuan and Han Lijing began to eat. Naturally, the two of them didn't mind that most of the dishes on the table were almost finished by the two little fellows. Han Lijing was very happy to meet such a good young master who took the initiative to bring him business. He pulled his daughter along and toasted Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan also didn't refuse anyone. This meal was very enjoyable for everyone. Of course, it had to be said that Han Yushi's cooking skills were really good. The mushroom and pheasant stew was very delicious. Li Zixuan, who didn't like to eat stew, ate a lot. Of course, it was unknown whether the pheasant was made by Han Yushi. After lunch, Han Yushi began to clean up the dishes. Li Zixuan quickly asked Xiao He to help. At this time, Iron Egg said to Han Lijing, "Father, I'm going to the threshing field at the entrance of the village to play." At this time, Lan was also eager to try. She also felt that the scenery of the countryside was very novel. She said to her brother, "Brother, Lan wants to go out and play with Brother Iron Egg." "Well, then you can go with Iron Egg. Remember to come back in 2 hours." Li Zixuan thought about it. Since Iron Egg was Iron Egg's son, there shouldn't be any accidents if Lan followed Iron Egg to the village to play. At this time, Han Lijing said to Iron Egg solemnly, "Iron Egg, listen to me. You must take good care of the young miss. If anything happens to the young miss, I will skin you." Iron Egg quickly nodded in agreement. Even if his father didn't say it, he would do it. He wasn't a completely ignorant child. He naturally knew that the young master and the young miss were so good to their family. He was very grateful to them in his heart. Just like this, the 2 little brats went out. Li Zixuan chatted with Han Lijing in the front room. Not long after, Han Yushi finished cleaning up the dishes in the kitchen and came to the front room with Xiao He. She sat next to Han Lijing and listened to them quietly. After chatting for a while, Li Zixuan stood up and said, "Uncle Han, please tell the farmers about the business I told you about this morning. I want to go to the farm alone. When it's time for us to go back, I'll come and say goodbye to Uncle Han." Han Lijing hurriedly said, "Young master, you are not familiar with the manner. Let Yushi accompany young master." Li Zixuan declined. "How could I trouble Miss Han? I'll just walk around and come back. I won't get lost." In fact, he also hoped that he could go out with Han Yushi, but he couldn't show it so obviously. When it was time to decline, he still had to decline. Han Lijing waved his hand and said, "It's okay, it's okay. Yushi has nothing to do at home in the afternoon. It's just nice to go out with the young master." After saying that, he said to his daughter, "Yushi, accompany the young master to walk around the manor in the afternoon." Han Yushi softly replied, "Okay, father." Li Zixuan was a little happy in his heart, but his face was calm. He cupped his hands and said to Han Yushi, "Then I'll have to trouble Miss Han." Han Yushi hurriedly bowed and said, "It's okay." Li Zixuan then said to Xiao He and the others, "Xiao He, Xiao Shi, housekeeper Wang, the journey this morning was bumpy. You must be tired. Rest at Uncle Han's house for a while. After I finish walking around the manor, we'll go back." The few of them naturally agreed. However, Xiao He looked at her young master suspiciously. The way Li Zixuan looked at Han Yushi in the morning was caught by the quick-witted Xiao He. Xiao He was wondering if her young master had deliberately shaken them off and secretly went out with Han Yushi for a rendezvous. Li Zixuan naturally didn't know what the servant girl was thinking. He brought Han Yushi out. Li Zixuan walked side by side with Han Yushi on the small road in the countryside. He breathed in the fresh air, listened to the occasional crowing of chickens and barking of dogs in the village, and watched a group of naughty children chasing each other and playing not far ahead. At this moment, his heart was incomparably peaceful. It was as if he had returned to his previous life. It was the same small road in the countryside, the same crowing of chickens and barking of dogs, and the same village urchins. He couldn't help but have a deep sense of nostalgia in his eyes. "Unfortunately, I can't go back anymore. Even if I build trains and planes in this era, I can't go back," Li Zixuan muttered in his heart. Han Yushi lowered her head and walked with Li Zixuan for a while, but Li Zixuan didn't say anything. She was a little curious and raised her head to look at Li Zixuan. She saw that Li Zixuan's expression was complicated, and his eyes were confused. His gaze seemed to be nostalgic, but also seemed to be sad. When Han Yushi saw that gaze, she couldn't help but feel her heart ache. She whispered, young master, what are you thinking about?" When he heard Han Yushi's soft inquiry beside him, There seemed to be a faint trace of concern in her tone. He quickly woke up from his memories, sorted out his emotions, and tried to speak in a calm tone. Nothing. It's just that when I saw the peaceful and comfortable scenery of the countryside, I thought of my master. Han Yushi asked curiously, "Young master, you have a master?" Li Zishuan recalled and said, "Yes. When I was young, my body was weak. All the doctors said that I wouldn't live past the age of 8. When I was 6, my master came to my house and told my father that he could cure me. He needed to take me to Mount Longhu to learn from him. That year, I went to Mount Longhu with my master. A few years ago, regardless of whether it was cold or hot, my master forced me to practice martial arts. My hands and feet were blistered, and my face was frostbitten, but my master didn't let me stop. At that time, I hated my master for being so cruel. Later, I finally learned something, but my master was old. At that time, I kind of understood my master's painstaking efforts. The conditions in the mountains were poor, but my master was always able to get me meat all these years. Before my master died, he told me that because my body was weak, I would die if I didn't practice martial arts well. He didn't want me to die, so he forced me when I was young and told me not to blame him. In fact, in the later years, I became more sensible and understood my master's painstaking efforts. I never blamed him. I became his disciple when I was 6 years old, and I spent my childhood with him. To me, he was more like a father than a teacher. For 8 years, he taught me top-notch martial arts without asking for anything in return, allowing me to live to this day. Before I could even repay him, he had already passed away. Of course, Li Zishuan couldn't tell her that he was thinking about his family more than 1,000 years later, so he told her what happened to this body when he was young. However, he spoke with sincerity. As he spoke, he couldn't help but put himself in the role of this body. When he got emotional, the corners of his eyes couldn't help but moisten. As Li Zishuan spoke, Han Yushi's heart also became sad. When she heard the end, she couldn't help but cry. She originally thought that Li Zishuan was a rich young master who didn't eat the hardships of the world. She didn't expect his life experience to be so rough. Looking at Li Zishuan's wet eyes, she saw Li Zishuan's bruised soul under his strong appearance. She couldn't help but feel her heart ache. "Young master, your master will definitely be very happy if he sees that you're doing well from the heavens. You said it yourself, your master treats you like a father treats his own child. Parents treat their children well, and they don't want their children to repay them. Young master, don't blame yourself. You living well now is the best way to repay your master," Han Yushi comforted gently. "That's right. When parents treat their children well, why would they think about their children repaying them in the future? Their love is the most selfless love in the world. They only hope that their children will live well in the future." When Li Zishuan heard this, he couldn't help but mutter in his heart, "Father, mother, your son is unfilial and can't be filial in front of you. However, in this great Tang dynasty, I will live well. I will live well. You don't have to worry." "Thank you, Miss Han. I'm fine." After thinking it through, Li Zishuan looked seriously into Han Yushi's eyes and thanked her. You're welcome." Han Yushi was a little flustered by Li Zishuan's serious gaze and hurriedly said. Chapter 23. The two of them chatted and soon finished touring the village. Li Zishuan was a little reluctant to part with her. "Miss Han, where do you usually go to pick wild fruits?" Li Zishuan, who was reluctant to part with her, began to find a topic to talk about. Han Yushi pointed to the mountain behind them and said, "It's on that mountain." Li Zishuan looked in the direction of her finger and saw the dense forest on the small hill. He said, "Aren't you afraid when you go alone? What if you meet a wild beast like a tiger?" Han Yushi smiled and said, "A few years ago, there were indeed some fierce tigers and fierce beasts in this mountain. But during those years, the world was in chaos and the harvest was not good. Many people in the village were starving. My father organized the villagers to go into the mountain to hunt. In the past few years, all the large beasts in the mountain have been hunted. Li Zishuan heard and said, "Oh, then let's go up the mountain to take a look." Han Yushi nodded in agreement. The two of them walked up the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, a few peach blossoms were in full bloom. It was very beautiful. A few butterflies danced in the wild flowers by the roadside. A few birds chased each other and played in the forest on the mountain. Li Zishuan was very happy with the beauty by his side and the beautiful scenery in front of him. "Miss Han, I have a question, but I don't know if it's appropriate to ask," Li Zishuan asked. "Young master, if you have something to say, Yushi will tell you everything she knows." Li Zishuan hesitated and said, "Why didn't I see your mother at your house?" Han Yushi's face instantly turned pale. Deep sadness flashed in her eyes. Li Zishuan saw this and immediately apologized. "I'm sorry, Miss Han. I took the liberty. Don't be sad." Han Yushi shook her head and was silent for a while before saying, "My mother passed away after giving birth to the iron egg. I was 7 years old at that time. My father was still fighting in the front line. In order to support my brother, I went to help Master Lu in the nearby plum village to herd cattle and sheep. I fed the horses and chopped firewood. When I earned money, I bought goat milk for my brother." This Master Lu's family was the previous owner of the Han village. They were very harsh and often bullied the villagers in the village. Everyone was angry but didn't dare to say anything. They were afraid that landlord Lu wouldn't let them plant the land. Iron Egg was very naughty when he was young. He would cry whenever I left, so I could only take him to work. Later, when I couldn't hold on any longer, my father finally came back. It was when I was 9 years old, which was the 6th year of Wuda. My father came back with a limp. My father, Wu De, joined the army in the first year of the Yuan Dynasty. Later, he was transferred to old General Qin's personal guard. In the 6th year of Wuda, the Turks attacked the borders of our great Tang, and my father accompanied General Qin to battle. Later on, I heard my father say that during a pursuit, General Qin was ambushed by the Turks. The Turks' great general Ashina Shirkiyu wanted to kill General Qin with a bow and arrow. At the critical moment, my father rushed over on his horse and threw himself at General Qin, but the arrow pierced through my father's thigh. At that time, he didn't have time to treat his wound. My father limped and followed General Qin to kill the enemy. Coincidentally, General Yuchi led the army to help. My father and General Qin fought their way out of the encirclement and followed the reinforcements to destroy the enemy. After returning to the camp, although the arrow wound on my father's thigh was healed, because the treatment was too late, his right leg became disabled and it was difficult for him to return to the battlefield. My father knew that General Qin would definitely not abandon him, but my father didn't want to be a burden to General Qin. Thus, he left a letter and secretly came back alone. Following Han Yushi's recollection, Li Zishuan's thoughts also returned to the era where the flames of war raged and human lives were like grass. In his heart, he also admired a tough man like Han Lijing. Without countless people like Han Lijing fighting bloody battles, the Great Tang would not have its current peace. Perhaps the Han people's clothes would have been slaughtered by the armored cavalry of the foreign race. No wonder he saw a Mo saber in Han Lijing's house. He didn't expect him to be a respectable soldier of the Great Tang. He also didn't expect Han Yushi to be so strong on the inside despite her weak appearance. At the age of 7, she raised her infant brother alone. One could imagine the difficulties and hardships she went through. Li Zishuan saw that Han Yushi's eyes were still filled with sadness. He couldn't help but pat her on the shoulder and said, "Miss Han, don't be sad. At least you, Iron Egg, and your father are all doing well now. If your mother knew in the netherworld, she would definitely be gratified. Besides, with me around, the people of the Han family village will live better and better lives in the future." As he spoke, Li Zishuan didn't know how to continue. He wasn't very good at comforting people. Seeing Li Zixuan racking his brains to think of words to comfort her, Han Yushi couldn't help but laugh through her tears. She said, "I just comforted young master. I didn't expect young master to comfort me again." Hearing Han Yushi's words, Li Zixuan thought about it and felt that it was rather interesting. He smiled and said, "In that case, let's not comfort each other. We'll be happy in the future. This way we can let the ancestors who love us leave at ease." Han Yushi agreed softly, "Yes." At this moment she felt the weight on her shoulder. It turned out that Li Zixuan's hand had been resting on her shoulder. Han Yushi turned her head to look and immediately blushed. Li Zixuan followed her gaze and found his hand. He secretly blamed himself for forgetting to take it off when he patted her shoulder to comfort her. Of course, whether it was because he forgot to take it off or because he couldn't bear to take it off at that time, it wasn't for others to know. Feeling the warmth of his fingertips and smelling the feminine fragrance on Han Yushi's body, he couldn't help but feel a little restless. However, seeing that the tears at the corner of Han Yushi's eyes had not dried, Li Zixuan secretly scolded himself for being a beast. He quickly took his hand off and explained awkwardly, Sorry. I wanted to comfort you just now. I didn't mean it." Han Yushi's face turned even redder when she heard that. She clenched her small hands and looked down at her toes. She said softly, "It's okay. Yushi knows that young master is not a frivolous person." The ambiguous atmosphere filled the mountain. Li Zixuan didn't know what to say at this moment. Although he had a girlfriend in his previous life, he met her online. In reality, he was still clumsy when he spoke. He was an out-and-out otaku. He wasn't like the playboy in his dormitory. When he saw a girl, he could make her happy with just a few words. He couldn't wait to marry her immediately. He had always been envious of his roommate's ability to flirt with girls, but this thing couldn't be envied. Han Yushi naturally wouldn't speak. At this moment, her heart was also in a mess. Li Zixuan was tall and handsome. He was also very gentle to her. Although she didn't love Li Zixuan very deeply, after all, they had only been together for a day, she still had a good impression of Li Zixuan. After a long time, Li Zixuan finally broke the silence and said, "Miss Han, let's go down the mountain. It's getting late. I should go home." When Han Yushi heard that, her face darkened slightly. She felt a little disappointed for no reason. She didn't know when they would meet again after parting today. She replied softly, "Okay." The two walked down the mountain side by side. Chapter 24. Li Zixuan was about to go down the mountain with Han Yushi when they suddenly heard a muffled tiger roar behind them. The two of them looked at each other in shock and hurriedly turned around. They saw a huge white tiger slowly walking out of the forest. Its ferocious eyes stared coldly at Li Zixuan and Han Yushi. Han Yushi was so scared that her face turned pale. "Young master, you go first. Nothing can happen to you. I will hold it back for a while." Han Yushi was extremely frightened. She had never seen such a huge tiger before, but she immediately thought of Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan absolutely could not have anything happen to him in the Han village. He was the hope of so many villagers in the Han village to live a good life. Li Zixuan was actually a little scared. It was his first time seeing such a huge tiger. Moreover, this tiger was emitting a bloody smell. It was obvious that it had just finished hunting. He did not know if his martial arts could deal with this huge tiger. After all, he had experience fighting with people, but he had never fought with a tiger. However, when he heard Han Yushi's trembling voice, he was really touched. He did not expect this girl to ask him to go first even though she was clearly scared. Of course, Li Zixuan wouldn't leave. Although he didn't have any experience in fighting a tiger, he was quite confident in his martial arts. Besides, even if he couldn't win, he wouldn't let the girl he liked sacrifice herself to protect him. Seeing that the tiger was getting closer and closer to the two of them, Li Zixuan pulled Han Yushuan's soft and boneless hand. At this time, he was not in the mood to feel the beautiful girl's hand. he said in a very serious tone. Miss Han, when you encounter a tiger, you must not turn around and run. That will only lead to death. A human cannot outrun a tiger. In a while, you will face the tiger and slowly retreat. I will deal with this beast. I, Li Zishuan, will not let a woman stand in front of me. Han Yushi shook her head and refused to leave. She thought that Li Zishuan was going to use his life to buy time for her to escape. At this moment, the little girl's tears flowed freely. Li Zishuan was also a little helpless, but there wasn't much time left for them. He squeezed Han Yushi's hand and said very seriously, Miss Han, listen to me. I have the confidence to deal with this tiger, but if you stay by my side, I'm afraid that the tiger will hurt you. I can't take care of you. Stay away from here. You have to believe me. I really can deal with it. Perhaps Li Zishuan's calmness had infected her. Han Yushi composed herself and nodded at Li Zishuan. She looked at the tiger and began to retreat step by step. When the tiger saw that someone was retreating, it was about to chase after him when it heard Li Zishuan shout, Evil creature, your opponent is me. It was Li Zishuan who picked up a long stick from the ground with the tip of his foot and blocked in front of the tiger to buy some time for Han Yushi to retreat. After all, the tiger was extremely fast. If they fought and the tiger turned to attack Han Yushi, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to save her. Li Zishuan didn't bring a sword when he came out in the afternoon. He could only pick up a stick as a weapon. After all, he didn't expect that he would be so unlucky to meet a big tiger when he went out. When the tiger saw that the person in front of it actually took the initiative to provoke it, it was furious. It roared angrily and kicked its hind legs hard. It flew towards Li Zishuan's face. It wanted to crush the head of the person who dared to challenge its dignity. Although the tiger was fast, it was not enough in Li Zishuan's eyes. He had full confidence that he could dodge this attack, but he couldn't. Han Yushi hadn't retreated far behind him. How dare you? Li Zishuan roared. Holding the long stick, he flew towards the big tiger and ruthlessly smashed it in the head. However, the tiger was quite intelligent. It was unwilling to use its head to receive this blow. It immediately turned its head in the air. Li Zishuan's fatal blow hit the tiger's butt. The tiger fell to the ground and cried out in pain. Not only did this blow not scare it away, but it also aroused the tiger's ferocity. The tiger bared its teeth and slowly moved, looking for the next opportunity to attack. Li Zishuan didn't want to give it a chance to think. He used the orchid butterfly steps and arrived in front of the tiger in a flash. The cloud-piercing steps that Li Zishuan used before was a light body technique. It was more useful for long-distance travel and climbing over high ground. The orchid butterfly steps was a close-range footwork technique. The instantaneous burst of speed was very shocking. It was very useful in close-range combat. It was like a vigorous butterfly moving left and right in the battlefield, making it difficult for the enemy to distinguish. The big tiger didn't expect Li Zishuan to be so fast. At this time, it was too late for it to dodge. It used its head to take the blow and was immediately sent flying 10 meters away. Its eyes were seeing stars. The tiger was furious. Since its debut, it had never suffered such a big loss. With a leap, it pounced towards Li Zishuan again. Li Zishuan didn't expect the tiger's head to be so hard. It could still counterattack after being hit by his stick. Therefore, he held the stick in front of his chest with both hands and waited for the tiger to rush over to give it a ruthless blow. Unexpectedly, the tiger changed direction in the air and used its foreleg to block Li Zishuan's long stick. Its hind leg fiercely kicked Li Zishuan's arm and flew straight towards the retreating Han Yushi. It saw that Li Zishuan was not to be trifled with, so it changed direction and wanted to bite Han Yushi. When the tiger kicked his arm, Li Zishuan had a bad feeling and guessed its intention. He secretly cursed this beast for being so cunning, just like a tiger demon that had turned into a spirit. Ignoring the burning pain in his arm, Li Zishuan hurriedly turned around. He couldn't bear to see such a beautiful girl like Han Yushi die in the tiger's mouth. He saw that the big tiger was now less than 5 feet away from Han Yushi, and he was now more than 10 feet away from Han Yuxuan. Li Zixuan's eyes were about to split open. He used all his strength to activate the 5th level of the Taishan Sutra and poured all his inner strength into his legs. His lower clothes couldn't stand the violent power of the true essence. His trousers were immediately torn apart and blood seeped out of his calves. Li Zixuan roared and used the orchid butterfly steps with all his strength. His speed had reached the limit in an instant. Like a sharp arrow, he flew towards the tiger. Li Zixuan even heard a sonic boom at this moment. The air rushed back from his cheeks and scraped his face painfully. Seeing that the tiger's front claws were about to grab Han Yushi's face, Li Zixuan arrived first. He had already reached the top of the tiger's head. He held the long rod tightly with both hands and poured his inner strength into the long rod. Then, he ruthlessly pierced the tiger's neck. The tiger let out the last scream of its life. For a moment, blood splattered everywhere. Li Zixuan and the tiger fell at Han Yushi's feet. When the tiger jumped from Li Zixuan's body to her, Han Yushi was already a little scared and didn't know what to do. She couldn't move her legs. When she saw that the tiger's front claws were about to touch her face was filled with despair. Although her heart was filled with the fear of death, at this moment, she still prayed in her heart that the young master could escape. Just as she was about to close her eyes and welcome death, she saw a man holding a long rod above the tiger. It was Li Zixuan. Because he was too fast, the wind blew Li Zixuan's long hair. His handsome face was full of anxiety and worry. He held the rod with both hands like a hero. When the tiger was about to grab her face, he stabbed the tiger's neck. Han Yushi, who was in despair, couldn't help but be a little dazed when she saw this scene. She would never forget this scene for the rest of her life. Bang! 2 muffled sounds came from the woods. All the dust settled and the mountains returned to peace. When the tiger's warm blood splashed on Han Yushi's face, Han Yushi came back to her senses and realized that she was saved. She looked lovingly at Li Zixuan, who was kneeling on one knee on the tiger's stomach, but still holding the long rod on the tiger's neck tightly with both hands. At this moment, Han Yushi felt that a person had entered her heart, a man that she would never forget for the rest of her life. "Young master, are you okay?" Seeing the bloody scratches on Li Zixuan's arm, Han Yushi hurriedly squatted down and cried. Seeing this peerless beauty crying in front of him, Li Zixuan hurriedly said, "Miss Han, I'm fine. I was just scratched by that beast. It's not a big deal. Don't cry." Han Yushi grabbed Li Zixuan's hand and looked at his bloody arm and calf. She couldn't help but cry out, "What do you mean you're fine? You've lost so much blood. How can you be fine? Why are you in such a hurry to save me? I won't die if I'm scratched by that tiger." Boo-hoo, as she spoke, she couldn't help but throw herself into Li Zixuan's arms and cry bitterly. Li Zixuan didn't care about enjoying the beauty in his arms. He wanted to pat Han Yushi's back with his hand, but seeing that his hand was full of blood, he was afraid of dirtying her clothes. He could only give up and comfort her softly. "Miss Han, I'm really fine. This is all the blood on the tiger's body. I'm not seriously injured. I'll be fine after I go back and bandage it. Don't cry. You won't be beautiful if you keep crying." After comforting her for a long time, Han Yushi stopped crying. She raised her head and looked at Li Zixuan with tears in her eyes. "Young master, can you not call me Miss Han in the future?" Li Zixuan was stunned for a while before he reacted. He was a little happy and said, "Then I will call you Yushi, okay?" Han Yushi's face was slightly red as she replied in a low voice. His relationship with this beautiful girl had finally improved a little. Li Zixuan was a little excited. At this moment, seeing Han Yushi's blushing face, he wanted to tease her a little. He smiled and said, "Then Yushi, can you not call me young master in the future? As a good friend, isn't it too distant for you to call me young master?" Han Yushi also felt that what he said seemed to make sense, so she asked, "Then? What should I call you?" Why don't you call me Brother Xian Yushi? Li Zishuan shamelessly suggested. No way, I'll call you young master. Han Yushi's face suddenly looked as if a big red cloth was hanging on it. Sigh, the revolution had yet to succeed. He still needed to work hard. After failing to fool her, Li Zishuan was not discouraged. He continued, Yushi, let's go down the mountain now. Lan and the rest must be waiting anxiously. Are we leaving just like that? Han Yushi felt a little sad. After all, she was not someone from the same world as him. Li Zishuan used the long rod to pick up the big tiger and brought Han Yushi down the mountain. However, he did not know that something big had happened at the foot of the mountain. Chapter 25. 2 hours ago, at the threshing field of the Han village. Brother Iron Egg, what's so fun about the threshing field? As soon as they arrived at the threshing field, Lan couldn't wait to ask. I made an appointment with Dinyo, Ernyo, and Zhu Zi this morning to fight grasshoppers in the threshing field in the afternoon. Iron Egg replied. At this time, they saw that there were already 3 children squatting on the ground waiting for them on the threshing field, so they hurried over. Iron Egg, why are you so late? A chubby boy with a runny nose pointed at Iron Egg and said discontentedly. Hee, Ernyo, I have something to do at home today. Iron Egg touched his stomach and said embarrassedly. In fact, the chicken he ate at noon was too delicious, so he ate happily and forgot that there was such a thing in the afternoon. Iron Egg, who is she? A slightly taller chubby boy next to Ernyo pointed at Lan and said. Hello, my name is Lan. I'm Iron Egg's elder sister. Lan didn't wait for Iron Egg to speak and hurriedly introduced herself. Didn't Iron Egg have an elder sister? The children were a little confused, but seeing that Iron Egg didn't refute, they just thought that Lan was Iron Egg's distant elder sister. The taller chubby boy said, Oh, hello, Iron Egg's elder sister. My name is Dinyo. Another dark skinny boy also introduced himself. My name is Zhu Zi. At this time, Ernyo said, Iron Egg, you and your elder sister came late and haven't caught grasshoppers yet. Go and catch them quickly. The 3 of us have already caught them. After saying that, he proudly showed the grasshopper in his hand. Iron Egg heard this and immediately pulled Lan to the field to look for grasshoppers. At this time, grasshoppers haven't grown up yet. They were all small green grasshoppers, so it was difficult to find them in the green grass. Lan looked for a long time but couldn't find one. She was a little anxious. At this time, she heard Iron Egg exclaim, I caught one. Lan hurriedly went over and saw a medium-sized green grasshopper in Iron Egg's hand. In this season, such a big grasshopper was already considered big. Lan quickly said, Brother Iron Egg, give this to me. Go and catch another one. Before he could finish speaking, he quickly snatched the grasshopper from Iron Egg's hands. Iron Egg had a bitter expression on his face. It was not easy for him to catch this, but it was snatched away before he could even warm it up. At this moment, Lan whispered, The next time you come to the Han Manor, I'll bring you 2 plates of nibbled chicken. Hearing this, Bruiser was immediately overjoyed. He eagerly went to catch more grasshoppers. Lan looked at the little grasshopper in her hand. The more she looked at it, the more she liked it. She said to the grasshopper, Wow, you look so mighty. You look like a general. I'll name you Wei Qing. After naming it, Lan was quite pleased with herself. After a while, Iron Egg caught another grasshopper. Although it was not as majestic as the one in Lan's hand, it was not small either. Lan looked at it and said to Iron Egg, Brother Iron Egg, your grasshopper will be called Huatsubing. Let's go and kill them all. The 2 of them brought their grasshoppers back to the threshing field. After greeting Dinyo, Ernyo, and Zhu Zi, the 5 of them took out their grasshoppers and started to fight. After a while, as expected, only Lan's Wei Qing and Iron Egg's Huatsubing were left. At this moment, Lan picked up Wei Qing and said, There's no need to fight anymore. My Wei Qing is first. Brother Iron Egg's Huatsubing is second. Iron Egg heard this and had a bitter expression. He was about to object when Loner raised a finger to signal him. A plate of nibbled chicken? Iron Egg understood Loner's meaning and swallowed his saliva. His eyes lit up and he hurriedly nodded in agreement. Oh, I was wondering who this was. Iron Egg, are you fighting grasshoppers? At this moment, everyone heard a male duck's voice coming from the village entrance. Iron Egg looked at the person who had come. It was a wretched fatty around 10 years old with 3 moles on his face. He frowned and said, Lu Haojin, why are you here? Why can't I be here? Lu Haojin raised his eyebrows and said, This young master is here to fight your grasshopper today. It just so happens that you just finished fighting those 3 brats. Quickly take out your grasshopper and fight with this young master. I won't fight with you. Iron Egg frowned and said. After saying this, he pulled Loner back home. Hey, you won't fight with me? This little girl is quite cute. If you don't fight with me, this young master will capture her and make her my maid, Lu Haojin said with ill intentions. After he said this, a few servants went up to block Loner and Iron Egg's path. Iron Egg heard this and was furious. You dare? This is the Han Manor. My father will beat you to death when he comes. Hearing Iron Egg mention his father, Lu Haojin's eyes flashed with a trace of hatred. He said hatefully, Bah, your father is a lame old thing. A few years ago, every time I came to collect rent with my father, that old thing, your father just had to meddle in other people's business. Sooner or later, I will kill that old thing. Iron Egg heard the other party cursing his father and his eyes were spitting fire. He clenched his fists so hard that his nails dug into his flesh. He said angrily, That's because your rent scale is not following the rules. That's why my father stepped in. Lu Haojin waved his hand and said, Don't talk so much nonsense. Are you going to fight or not? If you don't, I will capture this little girl and make her my maid. At this moment, Loner pulled Iron Egg's hand and asked in a low voice, Who is this ugly fatty? Bruiser almost laughed out loud when he heard this. He quickly explained in a low voice, He is the son of our Han Manor's previous owner, Lu Haojin. This person used to bully the people in our manor and is very bad. Loner heard this and suggested, Brother Iron Egg, you should fight with him first. Your Huatsubing will definitely not lose. Let's stall for time and wait for my brother to come and beat him to death. Iron Egg heard this and felt that it made sense. He nodded and walked out. Lu Haojin, I will fight with you. When Lu Haojin heard that he had finally agreed, he grinned. The fat on his face was piled up with wrinkles. Loner, who was watching from the side, felt a little disgusted. She couldn't help but think to herself that when her brother came later, she would definitely ask him to smash this disgusting fatty's face. Iron Egg and Lu Haojin took out their grasshoppers and placed them together. Huatsubing was obviously stronger and killed Lu Haojin's grasshopper in a few rounds. Lu Haojin saw this and was furious. You cheated. I want to see your grasshopper. Iron Egg naturally had a clear conscience and placed the grasshopper in his hand for him to see. Who knew that Lu Haojin would snatch Huatsubing away and throw him on the ground and stomp him to death? You! Iron Egg saw that his favorite had been stomped to death and was furious. He wanted to fight. What about me? You want to hit me? Come and hit me, come and hit me! Lu Haojin pointed at his own face and taunted Bruiser. Iron Egg was furious, but when he saw the 6 or 7 servants behind Lu Haojin, he calmed down. If he was alone, he would run. If he could not win, he would just be caught and beaten. However, he had Sister Loner by his side. His father had told him to take good care of Sister Loner, so he could not take the risk. A wise man does not fight when the odds are against him. Iron Egg hatefully said in his heart. Coward, you don't even dare to hit me. Lu Haojin spat at Iron Egg's feet in disdain. Just as he was about to leave, he heard a voice. Lu Haojin, you are so despicable. Lan could not bear to see Iron Egg's brother being bullied and scolded from the side. Lu Haojin heard this and his eyes turned red. In the past, there were people who used his name to make fun of him, but that person's legs were broken by Lu Haojin's servants. He did not expect to be scolded by a little girl today. Lu Haojin glared at Lan and roared, "You guys, go and grab this little girl and beat her until her mouth is swollen." Chapter 26. A group of servants rushed over to surround Lan in an aggressive manner. "Who dares?" Iron Egg was shocked when he saw this. He picked up a bamboo stick from the haystack next to him and stood in front of Lan, waving the bamboo stick in his hand fiercely. The servants were a little hesitant. Lu Haojin shouted from behind, "Hurry up and attack him. There are so many of you who are afraid of this little brat." Iron Egg didn't wait for them to come up. He took the initiative to attack, waving the bamboo stick in front of him. Immediately, a servant's head was hit. Iron Egg continued to use the crazy devil stick technique to rush towards Lu Haojin. Lu Haojin saw this and ran away, cursing as he ran, "You bunch of trash. You can't even take him down with so many people. I'll teach you a lesson when I get back." Ow! Iron Egg hit the back of Lu Haojin's head with the stick. Seeing Lu Haojin being hit, Lan jumped up happily and clapped, "Little brother Iron Egg, come on, hit him hard." Lu Haojin was completely angry. He shouted at the servants, "Hurry up and attack him. Even if you get hurt, take the stick from that brat for me." Sure enough, when two of the servants heard this, they pushed against Tai Dan's rod and approached him. No matter how much strength Tai Dan used, the two of them could only endure it. Finally, the two of them got close to Iron Egg. One of the servants grabbed the stick from Iron Egg's hand. The rest of the servants immediately rushed forward and held Iron Egg down. Iron Egg was anxious and shouted at Lan, "Sister Lan, hurry up and go back and call my father." Lan didn't try to be brave. She quickly ran to Iron Egg's house to get help. Lu Haojin saw this and sneered, "Want to run? You two go and catch that stinky girl for me." The two servants quickly chased after Lan. Soon, they caught Lan. They didn't notice that Ernia had secretly run away. Lu Haojin walked in front of Iron Egg and ruthlessly slapped the Iron Egg's face twice. He hatefully said, "You little bastard, hit me, hit me." Then he spat at the Iron Egg. Iron Egg's face turned red with anger. He clenched his fists and stared at Lu Haojin's fat face. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? Especially when he was beaten up by this fatty in front of Sister Lan. He felt even more humiliated. He secretly swore in his heart that he would definitely take revenge. Li Zixuan carried the big tiger and finally walked to the front of the Han family's courtyard with Han Yushi. Just as she was about to enter, she saw a little fatty with snot running towards Han Yushi. Sister Yushi, quickly tell your father to go to the village entrance." Iron Egg was beaten up and someone called Lan was also caught. The little fatty ran in front of Han Yushi and said while panting. Li Zixuan was shocked when he heard this. He didn't dare to talk nonsense. He threw down the tiger on his shoulder and hugged Han Yushi's slender waist. He used all his strength to use the cloud-piercing steps and rushed towards the village entrance like a gust of wind. Ernie put his hands on his knees and lowered his head to catch his breath. He didn't hear Han Yushi speak for a long time. When he looked up, there was no one in front of him. He muttered, "Am I hallucinating?" Just as he was about to turn around and go back, he saw two young girls and an old man come out of the house. The young girl in green grabbed him and asked, "Little brother, who did you say was caught?" Ernie replied, "Iron Egg and Lan." The three of them turned pale with fright. They heard the old man say, "Shall he quickly go to the village and find Han Lijing. Tell him to go to the village entrance quickly. Shao Shi and I will go first." After saying that, the three of them hurriedly split up. These three people were Shao Shi, Shao He, and Steward Wang, who were resting in the Han family. They heard the noise outside the courtyard and hurriedly rushed out to investigate. Village entrance, threshing field. After Lu Haojin humiliated Iron Egg, he was about to rush towards Lan Er. Iron Egg said anxiously, Lu Haojin, if you have the ability, come at me. What kind of ability is bullying girls? Oh, you haven't been beaten enough? Then I'll fulfill your wish. After saying that, he kicked Iron Egg's stomach twice. Iron Egg was on the ground holding his stomach in pain, but he still stubbornly said, Lu Haojin, if you have the ability, come at me. Don't bully Lan Er. Lu Haojin couldn't be bothered with him. He turned around and was about to teach Lan Er a lesson. When Lan Er saw Lu Haojin hitting Iron Egg, she was so angry that her face turned red. She said angrily, Lu Haojin, stop. When my brother comes, he'll beat you to death. Lu Haojin scolded, stupid girl, you dared to scold me before. See if I don't tear your mouth apart. After saying that, he reached out to pull Lan Er's mouth. Stop. At this moment, a loud roar came from outside the crowd. Lu Haojin saw a young man in a servant's uniform walking over. He sneered, which family's dog servant dares to meddle in my business? Are you blind? How dare you touch my young miss? This servant was San Bao. Previously, Li Zixuan asked San Bao to watch the carriage at the village entrance. In the afternoon, San Bao took a nap on a haystack at the side. When she woke up, she saw many people gathered at the threshing field and wanted to take a look. Just as she walked over, she heard Lan Er scolding Lu Haojin. Her young miss was being bullied. San Bao quickly ran over. When she saw Lu Haojin about to pull Lan Er's mouth, she immediately stopped him. Lu Haojin was furious when he heard that. A stupid servant dared to speak rudely to him. He shouted to the two servants beside him, the two of you, go and beat this dog servant to death. Beat him to death. After being angered one after another, Lu Haojin was losing his mind. 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. San Bao was quickly beaten down by the 2 servants. Lu Haojin came over and kicked San Bao more than 10 times. San Bao felt something sweet in her throat and finally couldn't help but vomit a few mouthfuls of blood. Lan Er saw San Bao vomiting blood on the ground. She was so anxious that she cried, Stop beating him. Lu Haojin, stop. Lu Haojin walked towards Lan Er and sneered, Stupid girl, no one will come to save you now, right? Lan Er snorted, My brother will be here in a while. When he comes, I'll smash your ugly face. Hearing this little girl call him ugly, Lu Haojin was furious. He reached out to tear Lan Er's mouth. At this moment, Lu Haojin suddenly heard the sound of something breaking through the air. Following that, he saw a foot getting bigger and bigger in front of his eyes. Lu Haojin instantly flew out like a kite with a broken string. Li Zixuan brought Han Yushi to the threshing field. He saw a fat man with 3 moles on his face. He was about to reach out to pinch Lan Er's face. Li Zixuan couldn't help but be furious. He usually couldn't even bear to speak harshly to his sister Lan Er, let alone hit her. Now that he saw this fat man wanting to hit Lan Er, Li Zixuan couldn't hold it in anymore. He put down Han Yushi and used his movement technique. He dashed to a spot not far behind Lan Er in a few steps. He leaped up and kicked the fat man's face. Then, Li Zixuan gently landed on the ground. Without stopping, he kicked the 2 servants who were holding onto Lan Er's arms and sent them flying. Li Zixuan pulled Lan Er to his side and carefully looked at her. When he found that Lan Er was not injured, he was slightly relieved. He secretly rejoiced that he had arrived in time. Otherwise, who knew how much his little sister would have suffered? Li Zixuan's series of actions happened in a flash. The other servants didn't even have time to react before their young master was kicked to the ground. The servants were shocked. They quickly helped Lu Haojin up and protected him in the middle. Lan Er saw that her brother had finally come to save her. She hugged her brother's arm excitedly and cried, Brother, this damn fatty bullied Lan Er. Li Zixuan patted Lan Er's shoulder and wiped her tears. He couldn't help but feel his heart break. He comforted her in a low voice, Don't be afraid, Lan Er. Brother will avenge you. Lu Haojian's face was covered in blood. He looked ferocious. Li Zishuan's kick almost knocked him out. Even if he didn't faint, Lu Haojian was seeing stars. He had never been hit like this before. He shook his head and chased the stars away. He pointed at Li Zishuan and shouted incoherently, "All of you, go! Cripple him!" Chapter 27. Iron Egg. Suddenly, a sorrowful cry was heard. Han Yushi rushed to Iron Egg, who was lying on the ground and clutching his stomach. She squatted down and helped Iron Egg sit up. Looking at Iron Egg's red and swollen face, Han Yushi couldn't help but cry out, "Iron Egg, how are you? Does it hurt?" "Sister, Iron Egg is fine. Iron Egg doesn't hurt." "Iron Egg didn't hurt, Sister Lon." Hiss. Iron Egg tried hard to squeeze out a smile to comfort his sister, but it affected the wound on his mouth. At this moment, Li Zishuan also saw Iron Egg, who was lying on the ground with red and swollen cheeks, and San Bao, who had blood on the corner of her mouth and her clothes were dyed red. When he heard Iron Egg's weak voice, he guessed that the two of them were injured while trying to buy time to protect Lon. His heart ached. He liked Iron Egg, this clever child, very much. He wanted to bring him to his shop to learn something in the future, but he didn't expect him to be so seriously injured today. San Bao was also loyal to him, but today she was beaten to the point of vomiting blood to protect Lon. Li Zishuan's anger rose. He stared at the servants and Lu Haojian in front of him with murderous intent. If he hadn't rushed over in time today, the consequences would have been hard to say. They dared to bully Lon and hit the people around him. They must pay the price. The servants saw Li Zishuan's murderous gaze and the blood on Li Zishuan's body. This was the blood from the tiger on the mountain. He didn't even have time to change his clothes. At this moment, Li Zishuan made the servants feel that this person was like a demon from hell. They usually ran amok in the village, and had never seen such a terrifying person. Hearing Lu Haojian's roar, the servants didn't dare to step forward. They were just paid to be servants. There was no need to put their lives on the line. At this moment, Lu Haojian's mind was slightly clearer. Looking at the murderous Li Zishuan, he felt that this person was not easy to deal with. Today's matter would not be settled peacefully. He pulled over a servant and whispered a few words into his ear. That servant immediately ran away like a wisp of smoke. Li Zishuan knew that this fatty wanted to call for reinforcements. He looked at them coldly and did not stop them. It just so happened that there were not enough people in front of him to vent the anger in his heart. However, before the fatty's reinforcements arrived, there were many things he could do. Li Zishuan looked at Iron Egg and asked, "Iron Egg, who is this fatty? Why did he hit you?" When Iron Egg saw that Li Zishuan had come to the rescue, he let out a sigh of relief. The task given to him by his father was finally completed. Now that he heard the young master's question, he stood up with the help of his sister and told Li Zishuan everything that had happened in the afternoon. After he finished, he stared at Lu Haojian with eyes full of hatred. After hearing this, Li Zishuan could no longer hold back his anger. He stared coldly at Lu Haojian as if he was looking at a dead man. "Lu Haojian, how do you want to die today?" Lu Haojian trembled under this cold stare. He had never felt that death was so close to him. He did not care about Li Zishuan's scolding and trembled in fear. You can't kill me. I only beat up these two brats. You can't kill me. My father is Lu Shiren. If you kill me, my father won't let you off." Let's see if I dare to do it today." Li Zishuan dodged to the side. Lu Haojian didn't even see his movements clearly. He only heard the miserable screams of the guards protecting him. He saw those guards fly a dozen or so meters away like kites with their strings cut. They crashed heavily onto the ground, unable to crawl back up. Then, Lu Haojian's vision blurred. He only felt a sledgehammer ruthlessly hit the left side of his face. Before he could scream, he was sent flying. "Brother, hit that fatty's face. He just wanted to tear Lon Er's mouth." Brother wants to avenge Lan and Brother Iron Egg. Lan jumped up and said to her brother. She was not as scared as before when she saw her brother showing off his power. Young master, you also want to avenge Sanbao. Sanbao was almost kicked to death by this fatty. Sanbao saw that Lan did not mention her, so she quickly added. Li Zishuan naturally wanted to avenge his sister. He went forward and picked up Lu Haojian, who was lying on the ground. Lu Haojian shouted in fear. Don't hit me, don't hit me. I'll give you money, a lot of money. Don't hit me. Li Zishuan could not be bothered with him. He used 10 dragon-subduing slaps on his fat face. Li Zishuan's palms flew left and right. It was dazzling. Lu Haojian's head was twisted rapidly. Soon, his cheeks were swollen. His already fat face became even fatter. His face was even taller than the bridge of his nose. Lan Iron Egg and Sanbao were watching from the side. They were very satisfied. Lan waved her arms and jumped up. Good hit, brother, good hit. Li Zishuan slapped more than 10 times. He was tired and felt that it was meaningless. The main reason was that these people were too weak. They were not even as powerful as the big tiger on the mountain. If Lu Haojian heard Li Zishuan's words, he would definitely vomit blood. If he was half as powerful as the tiger, would he just stand there and let you hit him? Lu Haojian's face was so swollen that he could no longer speak. Li Zishuan picked him up with one hand and threw him in front of Iron Egg and Sanbao. Iron Egg, Sanbao, how did he hit you just now? Give me 10 times the amount. Young master, what happened to you? A worried voice came from outside. Li Zishuan looked and saw that it was Xiao Shi. Behind her was Wang Zhong. Xiao Shi saw that Li Zishuan was covered in blood and was shocked. She quickly ran over and asked worriedly. Li Zishuan waved his hand and said, I'm fine. The blood on me is not mine. He then looked at Wang Zhong and said, Uncle Wang, why are you here? Wang Zhong was also worried. When he heard that the blood was not his, he was slightly relieved. He said, Young master, we heard that something happened to young miss at Han Lijing's house, so we rushed over. Oh, I also saw a dead tiger at Han Lijing's house. Li Zishuan nodded and said, Uncle Wang, that tiger was killed by me. Lan is fine now. At this moment, a series of footsteps came from afar. Li Zishuan turned his head to look and saw a chubby middle-aged man leading 50 or so servants to protect the courtyard. Surprisingly, the servant who had just escaped was among them. The group of people rushed over in an aggressive manner. These should be the reinforcements that Lu Haojian had called for. Li Zishuan sneered. They came at the right time. I haven't finished venting my anger. Xiao Shi and Wang Zhong saw that there were so many people coming over aggressively. It was obvious that they did not come with good intentions. They were very worried. Wang Zhong could not help but say, Young master, you should hide in the village first. I have already asked Xiao He to find Han Lijing. Everything will be fine when Han Lijing comes. Xiao Shi also quickly nodded in agreement. Iron Egg, Han Yushi, and Lan were not very worried. They had seen Li Zishuan's martial arts. They felt that even if Li Zishuan could not defeat so many people, he would definitely be able to hold on until the villagers came to help. With such a big commotion, the villagers would definitely notice it. Li Zishuan shook his head and said, Uncle Wang, Xiao Shi, don't worry. These dozens of clowns will not be able to hurt me. Stand aside. After saying that, he took the initiative to go up to those people. Chapter 28. Li Zishuan walked a dozen steps towards the group of people and stopped when he was about 20 to 30 feet away from them. He crossed his arms and waited for them to come over. When the distance was about right, Li Zishuan shouted at the group of people, Is Lu Shuren here? If you are, come out and say something. Today, I will turn you, Lu Shuren, into a dead man. Li Zishuan was also speechless at the Lu family's naming skills. The father was called Lu Shuren, and the son was called Lu Haojian. How uncultured. How scary. When Wang Zhong heard Li Zixuan call out Lu Shiren, he was slightly stunned. He was only concerned about his young master and young miss, so he didn't know who the other party was. At this time, he looked at Lu Haojian, who was lying on the ground with his face swollen. After looking at him for a long time, he recognized that he had seen this person before. His face was ashen. When the leader of the group of people saw Li Zixuan, a 14 to 15-year-old child, speak rudely, he was so angry that he shouted, "Where did this stinking child come from? Today, I will teach you a lesson on behalf of your parent. I will teach you how to behave. All of you, go and beat him to death." This person was Lu Shiren. He was originally at home with the concubine he had just taken in, but he was interrupted by a servant. When he heard that his precious son had been beaten up in the Han family manner, he was shocked and angry. He put on his clothes and led all the servants and guards in the family to storm towards the Han family manor. When Li Zixuan saw that this person was so angry, he concluded that this was most likely Lu Shiren. When he heard his unpleasant words, he was furious. He didn't wait for the servants to come and took the initiative to attack. He was mainly afraid that so many people would hurt Lan and Yushi. Using the orchid butterfly steps, he flashed in front of Lu Shiren and fiercely punched his chin. Then, he flew up and kicked his round stomach. Lu Shiren was like a heavy artillery shell, smashing into the group of servants behind him. The group of servants didn't even have time to dodge and were all injured. When Li Zixuan landed on the ground, his expression was not good. He originally wanted to kick the middle-aged fatty more than 10 meters away to intimidate these people, who knew that he underestimated Lu Shiren's weight and kicked the wrong place. At that time, when he kicked Lu Shiren's round belly, he used too much strength. Although he kicked Lu Shiren away, the rebound from Lu Shiren's belly almost sent him flying. He spun twice in the air before stabilizing his body and landing on the ground. Li Zixuan's expression turned ugly as he had almost failed to act tough. The servant who had gone back to report the news was horrified. It was so fast again. He thought it was a fluke that his young master was kicked away so fast. Now, he kicked away his master, who was obviously several tons heavier than his young master. Moreover, the speed was so fast that no one could react. At this moment, even if he was stupid, he knew that he had encountered a legendary martial arts master. At that moment, he didn't care about his master and those servants. He turned around and ran away, wailing in his heart, "Go back to your hometown. I'm not going to be a servant here in Chang'an anymore. Whoever falls in love with this god of killing can have him." Lu Shiren was in so much pain that his face turned the color of pig liver. There was still blood on his chin. After he landed on the ground, he was like a turtle that flipped its shell. He twisted his buttocks a few times but couldn't get up. This made the dozen servants under him suffer. Originally, when he smashed them, a few of their bones were broken. Now that Lu Shiren was twisting his buttocks and trying to get up, they instantly howled in pain. A few servants who were not injured rushed over and spent a lot of effort to pull their master up. Lu Shiren's face was in a mess. The hat on his head was long gone, and his hair was disheveled. Most importantly, his head was bald, and only his hair was around. Lan who was watching from the side, couldn't help but giggle. Xiao Shi and Yushi also couldn't help but laugh. Lu Shiren was furious at this moment. Just as he was about to fly into a rage, he saw Wang Zhong. He was shocked and didn't bother to tidy up his appearance. He staggered over and said flatteringly, "Butler Wang, why are you here?" Wang Zhong's face was ashen. He pointed at Lu Shiren's nose and roared, "Why am I here? Lu Shiren, you have guts. Your son dared to bully my family's young miss, and you brought people to beat up my family's young master. You have guts. Just you wait, my master won't let you off." Lu Shiren was confused at this moment and said, "Ah, that young man just now was your family's young master?" Wang Zhong snorted and said, "What do you think? Lu Shiren staggered back 2 steps when he heard this, and his face turned even paler. He had met Wang Zhong many times before. Back then, when he sold the Han family manor, he had contacted Wang Zhong. He naturally knew that the master Wang Zhong mentioned was someone he couldn't afford to offend. He was just a landlord in the countryside, but Li Jingma was a tycoon in Chang'an. He knew many high-ranking officials and dignitaries. He could crush the Lu family with just a finger. Just now, he heard Wang Zhong say that his bastard son bullied Li Jingma's daughter. It's over, it's all over. Lu Shiren sat on the ground in despair. At this moment, there was a rush of footsteps in the village. Li Zishuan saw Xiao He and Han Lijing running over with a group of farmers holding hoes and machetes. Well, Li Zishuan also saw a fool holding a rolling pin. He couldn't help but feel speechless. Damn it, did you come to fight or to roll dough to make dumplings? Before this, Han Lijing had gathered the farmers and told them about the big deal that Li Zishuan had told him. When the farmers heard it, they couldn't believe that there was such a good thing. After confirming it over and over again, they thanked the master's family's young master and young miss for their kindness. At this moment, Xiao He hurriedly ran over and told Han Lijing that someone at the entrance of the village had caught the young miss. Han Lijing was furious when he heard this. A burly man with a full beard stood up and shouted, Han Lijing, what are you waiting for? Kill them! The master has been so good to us. Not only did he reduce our rent, he even brought us such a business deal. Yet, the young miss was caught here. We can't let down the master and Madam Li. Kill them. I old Hu will be the first to go. That's right, no matter who the other party is, kill them. I old Han will go too. Kill them, kill them. Count me Han in. Instantly the crowd was enraged. They all shouted that they wanted to save the young miss. The master's family had always been good to the Han village. This time they had brought them such a good business deal. They were grateful from the bottom of their hearts. Now that the young miss was in trouble at the Han village's good days would be ruined. How could they tolerate this? All right, our Han village doesn't have any cowards. If they dare to bully us and want to ruin our good days, we will fight it out with them. At this moment, Han Lijing stood up and shouted, fight it out, fight it out. Han Lijing led these angry villagers, picked up the farming tools beside them, and the group of people majestically charged towards the threshing field. When Han Lijing arrived at the threshing field, he saw from afar that the young miss was still safe and sound. His heart was slightly relieved. When he saw Li Zishuan covered in blood, his heart was filled with fear. He quickly walked to Li Zishuan's side and anxiously asked, young master, are you all right? Li Zishuan waved his hand and smiled. Uncle Han, I'm fine. The blood on my body isn't mine. It's just that I came late and caused your family's iron egg to be injured. Han Lijing looked at Iron Egg and saw that his face was only a little swollen. He said, it's good that young master and young miss are fine. Otherwise, this Han would have died 10,000 times. Iron Egg being beaten up is fine. That stinky brat's skin is thick. When Li Zishuan heard this, the corner of his mouth twitched. He silently mourned for Iron Egg. Was this Iron Egg's father really his own? At this moment, Han Lijing held his sickle and walked in front of Lu Shiren. Facing the dozens of servants beside Lu Shiren, he was not the least bit afraid. Thinking that if the young master had come a little later, the young miss might have been in trouble, the more he thought about it, the more scared he became. A monstrous murderous aura filled the air. This was the murderous aura that he gained from killing a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. At this moment, he really wanted to kill Lu Shiren. The Han family manor had finally welcomed such a kind-hearted master. If something happened to the young master and young miss here, the consequences of the Han family manor could be imagined. Han Lijing coldly said, Lu Shiren, what do you mean? When you were in the Han family manor, you maliciously bullied us villagers. Now that you've left, You came back to beat up our young master and young miss. Do you really think that the people of the Han family manor are made of mud? Do you believe that I won't kill you?" After he finished speaking, he placed the sickle in his hand in front of Lu Shiren's throat. At this moment, Lu Shiren's heart was filled with fear and grievance. He brought so many people here, but before he could even say a few words to Li Zishuan, he was already beaten up. Who was the one bullying who? "Kill him! Kill him!" The surrounding villagers all waved the farming tools in their hands and roared angrily. Lu Shiren was scared out of his wits by the angry roars of the crowd in front of him. He fearfully said to Han Lijing, "I was wrong, I didn't know that this person was your young master. Don't kill me, please spare my life." A trace of warm liquid flowed out from the bottom of his trousers. He was so scared that he actually peed his pants. The surrounding servants also did not expect that the villagers that they used to bully so casually would be so fierce today. They were so scared that they did not care about their master and young master anymore and scattered in all directions. Han Lijing pressed down with his other hand, indicating for everyone to be quiet. He said to Li Zishuan, "Young master, how do you want to deal with them? If young master wants to kill them, I, old Han, will do it myself. After that, I, old Han, will go to the government to take the blame." Han Yushi was a little touched at this moment, but she was also a little worried. She was really worried that Li Zishuan would let her father take the blame after killing them. However, this was her father's decision, and she could not stop it. Before Li Zishuan could speak, a big man with a full beard stood out and said, "No, young master, let me do it. I, old Hu, will take the blame. I, old Hu, have long disliked this Lu Shiren." The villagers immediately stood out and shouted, "Let me do it, I will take the blame." Li Zishuan looked at the scene in front of him and was a little touched. This was the simple people of Tang Empire. If you were good to them, they would repay you tenfold or 100-fold, even at the expense of their own lives. However, he did not want to kill the father and son of the Lu family. It was not worth it. He wanted to make them suffer a fate worse than death. Li Zishuan pressed down with his hands and waited for everyone to be quiet. Li Zishuan pushed the sickle away from Lu Shiren's throat and said to Han Lijing, "Uncle Han, even if I want to kill them, I won't let you take the blame. Moreover, I don't want them to die. I want them to suffer a fate worse than death. Uncle Han, get someone to break the father and son's hands and feet, then send them back." Han Yushi looked at him gratefully when she heard that. She thought to herself that she had not misjudged him. Young master was not that kind of selfish person. Li Zishuan said to Lu Shiren, "Lu Shiren, if you are not convinced, you can go to the government and sue me. I, Li Zishuan, will accompany you to the end." After saying that, he ignored the father and son of the Lu family who had fainted from fright and brought Han Yushi and the others back to Han Lijing's house. Such a bloody scene was not suitable for them to see. The rest was left to Han Lijing and the villagers. Chapter 29. Wow, what a big tiger! Li Zishuan and the others returned to the Han family's courtyard. Lan saw the big tiger at the door and was shocked. She screamed and immediately hid behind Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan patted Lan's head and said gently, "Lan, don't be afraid. That tiger is dead." Lan heard this and stuck her head out from behind Li Zishuan. After making sure that the tiger would not move, she slowly walked forward and observed the tiger. Iron Egg was also very curious. He ran over and touched the tiger with Lan. Li Zishuan did not care about them and entered the house with Han Yushi, Xiao He, and Xiao Shi. "Young master, I'll go boil some water. You can take a bath later. I'll bring my father's clothes for you to change into," Han Yushi suggested when she saw Li Zishuan covered in blood. Li Zishuan looked at his dirty body. It was indeed time to take a bath. If he went home like this, his mother would faint from fright. He nodded and said, "Okay, then I'll have to trouble Yushi. Xiao He, go and help Yushi." Xiao he had already noticed that the young master had changed the way he addressed Han Yushi from Miss Han to Yushi. The little girl looked at the young master suspiciously. When she heard the young master instructing her, she quickly agreed. She did not dare to ask the young master face to face. Moreover, how could a servant casually ask about the young master's feelings? After a while, Han Yushi and Xiao he carried a bucket of hot water into the house. Then, Han Yushi handed Li Zixuan a set of clothes and said, "Young master, please take a bath in my room." "Young master, you can wash in my father's room. These are my father's clothes when he was young. They might not fit you well. Young master, please wear them first." Li Zixuan looked at her beautiful little face and smiled. "Okay, Yushi, it's been hard on you. You must have been frightened today." At this moment, there were only the two of them in the room. It was a little ambiguous. Han Yushi blushed and said, "Young master, what are you saying? Young master, quickly take a bath. Yushi will go out first." After saying that, he hurriedly ran out of the door. Li Zixuan closed the door, took off his clothes, and sat in the bathtub. He shook his head and said to himself, "I didn't ask you to take a bath with me. Why did you run away so quickly? Could it be that this young master is not handsome? This shouldn't be the case." Li Zixuan finished showering, put on his clothes, picked up the bathwater, walked out of the door, and poured it out. Then, he walked back into the house. Han Yushi happened to see Li Zixuan wearing clothes that were obviously one size bigger than his body. He looked quite funny as he walked. She couldn't help but laugh. Li Zixuan turned around when he heard the sound. He knew what Han Yushi was laughing about. There was nothing he could do. He was only 14 years old. He would definitely look big in Han Lijing's clothes. So be it if she laughed. It was a good opportunity to admire the smile of a beauty. Han Yushi was shy from his stare. She quickly stopped smiling and her little face was a little red. She went forward to help Li Zixuan tidy up his collar. As Li Zixuan was taller than her, she was tiptoeing and tidying up the collar behind Li Zixuan's neck with both hands. This posture was very ambiguous. Li Zixuan looked at her lively eyes, white nose, and red lips. His Adam's apple bobbed a few times. He was very tempted. Han Yushi saw Li Zixuan staring at her. She smelled the strong masculine scent on his body and thought about how he flew over to save her from the tiger's mouth on the mountain. For a moment, she was also a little moved. Li Zixuan was about to lower his head and kiss her when he heard a child's voice. "Wow, brother, sister Yushi, what are you playing? Lan wants to play too." Lan finished touching the tiger and was looking around for her brother. When she came to the room, she saw her brother and sister Yushi hugging each other. She shouted excitedly. When Han Yushi heard that, she immediately pushed Li Zixuan away, as if she had been electrocuted. She retreated to the corner and blushed. She lowered her head and did not speak. Li Zixuan was helpless. He said to Lan, your sister Yushi is helping brother tidy up his collar. Lan, why didn't you knock when you came in? Aren't you afraid of the door demon?" When Han Yushi heard Li Zixuan mention the door demon, she raised her head and looked at him curiously. She did not know what story was inside. Lan said a little fearfully, "But brother didn't close the door. Do I have to knock?" Li Zixuan was stunned. He had made a mistake. He had actually forgotten to close the door. After a long time, Han Lijing finally came back. Wang Zhong and San Bao followed behind. Li Zixuan did not ask how Han Lijing had handled it. He stood up and said goodbye to Han Lijing. "Uncle Han, sorry for disturbing you today. It's getting late. We should go back." "Oh right, you need money to buy the mountain fruit. Uncle Wang, how much money did we bring this time?" "Young master, we only brought 10 strings of cash." "Okay, then give it all to Uncle Han. If Uncle Han doesn't have enough money in the future, you can ask Uncle Wang for more. This money can be deducted from the money from selling alcohol in the future," Li Zixuan said. Han Lijing did not expect his young master to be so thoughtful. He took the money and said gratefully, "Thank you for your trust, young master." Li Zishuan waved his hand and looked at San Bao. San Bao, how are you? Can you still walk? I'll give you a raise when we go back this time. Previously, Wang Zhong had brought San Bao to the village doctor for some simple treatment. After such a long time, she had recovered. When she heard her young master's question, she felt warm in her heart. Young master, San Bao is fine. San Bao is strong. After saying that, he even showed off his biceps. Li Zishuan smiled and said, "Okay, then let's go. Let's go home." Coming. Lan ran over. Li Zishuan clasped his hands and said to Han Lijing, "Uncle Han, we'll meet again someday." He turned back and looked at Han Yushi deeply. Li Zishuan would be lying if he said that he was not moved by this gentle, brave, and fairy-like girl. Although they had only known each other for a day, Han Yushi had left an impression on him that could not be erased for the rest of his life. Li Zishuan waved at her and said, "Yushi, goodbye." After saying that, he turned around and prepared to leave. Han Yushi silently watched Li Zishuan's back from the side. She was very reluctant to part with him, but so what? God could not help her make him stay. Perhaps God had heard the call in her heart. At this moment, the wind and clouds suddenly changed. A muffled thunder came from the sky. Wang Zhong looked at the dark clouds in the west and said worriedly, "Young master, I'm afraid that the rain is not light. We can barely make it back by horse, but it's very dangerous for a carriage to take the mountain road in this weather." Li Zishuan remembered the bumpy mountain road when he came back. He also felt that it was dangerous to take the mountain road in the rain. He hesitated and joked to Han Lijing. "Uncle Han, it seems that we have to keep guests in this weather. We can only trouble Uncle Han for one more night. We'll leave tomorrow when the rain stops." After saying that, he was secretly happy. Was it because he could stay with Han Yushi for one more night? He could not explain it. Han Lijing laughed heartily and said, "Young master, what are you saying? It's my honor that you can stay in my house. I still need to trouble Uncle Han with one more thing. Uncle Han, find a strong man with good skills to go to Chang, an city, and tell my mother that I'll be back tomorrow. I'm afraid that my mother will be worried." Li Zishuan suddenly thought of his mother and quickly told Han Lijing. "Yes, young master, don't worry. I'll arrange it." Han Lijing nodded and replied. Han Yushi was still sad about parting. When she heard them talk, she was happy. She thanked God in her heart for letting Li Zishuan stay. She even thought that it would be great if the rain never stopped. Chapter 30. After dinner, Han Lijing brought Iron Egg, San Bao, and Wang Zhong out. There were only 3 rooms in his house, and they definitely couldn't fit so many people. He had no choice but to bring the 3 of them to another house to sleep for the night. He had already made arrangements with those families. When they heard that they were the young master's people, they welcomed them with open arms. The rain outside was getting heavier and heavier. Li Zishuan tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep as he listened to the pitter-patter of the rain. Moreover, it was too early now. It was almost 6 o'clock in the evening in the modern world. In his previous life, he would only sleep at 11 or 12 o'clock at night. However, in this era there were no cell phones or computers. There was nothing else to do other than sleep at night. Brother, are you asleep?" Lan knocked on the door. Li Zishuan got up and opened the door. Lan squeezed in agilely. Li Zishuan looked at her and said, "Lan why aren't you asleep?" Lan and Han Yushi slept in one room, while Xiao He and Xiao Shi slept in another room. Lan came over and held her brother's hand. "Brother, we can't sleep. Why don't you come over and tell us a story?" Li Zishuan was puzzled. "You guys?" Lan nodded. "That's right. Sister Yushi, Sister Xiao He, and Sister Xiao Shi can't sleep. We're all in Sister Yushi's room waiting for you to come over and tell us a story." Li Zishuan was really tempted. He also wanted to go to Han Yushi's room to take a look. To be exact, he wanted to go to Han Yushi's room to see how charming Han Yushi looked when she was lying on the bed. Just thinking about it made him look forward to it. Lan didn't wait for her brother to agree. She pulled her brother's hand and dragged him out of the room. Li Zishuan came to Han Yushi's room. A faint girl's fragrance seeped into his nostrils. Li Zishuan couldn't help but greedily take in a breath. The three girls in the room quickly stood up and greeted him. "Young master." Li Zishuan nodded at them and then began to look around Han Yushi's boudoir. Although the furnishings in the room were not luxurious, they were placed very neatly. In addition to the dressing table, there was also a small table in the room. Han Yushi naturally wouldn't lie on the bed and wait for him to come over like he had just fantasized. In fact, Han Yushi didn't want Li Zishuan to come to her room, but she couldn't stand the coaxing and pestering of Lan and the two little maidservants. Moreover, she was quite curious about what story Li Zishuan wanted to tell them, so she agreed to those maidservants half-heartedly. At this moment, the three girls and Lan were sitting around a small table, waiting for Li Zishuan to tell them a story. Li Zishuan looked around. There were no more stools. His heart skipped a beat. He sat on Han Yushi's fragrant couch without any trace of politeness. When it was time to make a move, he had to make a move. There were no extra stools in this room. Han Yushi had no reason to blame him for sitting on the bed. Of course, he had to take advantage of this. When Han Yushi saw Li Zishuan sitting on her bed, she blushed shyly. She also realized that there were no other stools in the room. She couldn't help but blame herself for being too careless. Lan didn't notice the small movements of the two. When she saw her brother sit down, she said excitedly, "Brother, quickly tell me." Lan was almost taken away by bad people today. "Brother, quickly tell Lan journey to the west to calm Lan down." When Han Yushi and the other two heard this, they couldn't help but laugh. No one had ever taken the initiative to ask others to calm them down. Li Zishuan was also very speechless. Lan lively and excited appearance didn't look like she was frightened at all. Han Yushi was frightened on the mountain today. Since they were here, the story still had to be told. He shook his head and said, "Lan let's not talk about journey to the west tonight. Your sister Yushi hasn't heard of many of the previous stories. Today, let's talk about another story." Lan wasn't disappointed. Anyway, since her brother made it, it must be the best. At this moment, she shouted even more excitedly, "Okay, okay." When Han Yushi saw that Li Zishuan had to think about her even when telling a story, she felt very sweet in her heart. Li Zishuan looked at Xiao He and Xiao Shi and said, "Xiao He, Xiao Shi, you have heard the first part of this story before." When Xiao He heard this, she immediately remembered that afternoon when the young master said that no one could tell that she was a man dressed as a woman. Her face suddenly turned red. She swore that she would definitely not mention the question that afternoon again today. Li Zishuan didn't tease her anymore. He looked at Han Yushi and said, "The story that we are going to tell today is called Liang Shanbua and Zhu Yingtai." It was said that during the Eastern Jin Dynasty, there was a woman named Zhu Yingtai by the Zhu family's village in Shangyu County, Zhejiang Province. She was beautiful and smart. She had been learning poetry from her brother since she was young. She admired Ban Zhao and Kai Wenji's talent and learning. She only hated that her family didn't have a good teacher. She wanted to go to Hangzhou to study. Li Zishuan used his own words to tell them the plot that he saw from the TV series in his previous life. Although the words weren't beautiful, the story was beautiful and touching. As Li Zishuan told the story, Han Yushi, Xiao He, and Xiao Shi were all immersed in the story. Zhu Yingtai disguised herself as a man to study. Liang Shanbua didn't find out that she was a woman after sleeping with her for 2 years. Zhu Yingtai returned to her hometown to visit her relatives and was forced to marry by the Ma family. With the story's twists and turns, the hearts of the three girls rose and fell like a boat on the sea. Very quickly, Li Zishuan reached the climax of the story. Zhu Yingtai's bridal sedan was carried halfway when a gust of wind suddenly blew. The people carrying the sedan couldn't move anymore. At this time, the servant girl told Zhu Yingtai that Liang Shanbu's grave was in front of them. Zhu Yingtai didn't care about other people stopping her and walked out of the sedan. She insisted on going to Liang Shanbu's grave to mourn. Zhu Yingtai came to Liang Shanbu's grave and cried loudly. She was in so much pain that she wanted to die. She threw herself onto the grave. In a split second, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The wind and rain raged. A big crack suddenly appeared in the grave. Zhu Yingtai shouted Liang Shanbu's name and jumped into the grave. Then, the grave automatically closed. After a while, the rain stopped. The clouds parted and a rainbow appeared in the sky. A pair of beautiful butterflies flew up from the grave and danced around the grave. People said that this pair of butterflies was Liang Shanbu and Zhu Yingtai. When they heard the part where Liang Shanbu and Zhu Yingtai turned into butterflies, Xiao He and Xiao Shi both burst into tears. Han Yushi's eyes were wet. She looked at Li Zixuan with a complicated expression. She thought, although Zhu Yingtai and Liang Shanbu's love life was bumpy, they had lived happily together for 2 years. Although they didn't have the same quilt, they died in the same cave in the end. Wasn't that a kind of happiness? However, her status was so different from the young masters. Could they really be together in the end? After Li Zixuan finished telling the story, he stood up and said, "All right, it's late. Let's go to bed early." Lan Er said unhappily, "Brother, the story you told today wasn't good." Lan Er didn't understand love, so she naturally felt that this story wasn't as good as Journey to the West. Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Then I'll tell Lan Er Journey to the West tomorrow. It's time to sleep now." He turned his head and waved his hand at Han Yushi and said with a smile, "Yushi, rest early." Han Yushi's mind was still in the story. She forced a smile and said, "Young master, you should rest early too." Chapter 31. The next morning, Li Zixuan woke up from his sleep. He pushed open the window and found that the rain that had been raining all night had stopped. The fresh smell of the soil after the rain hit him in the face. He immediately felt refreshed. After practicing the Sutra of Supreme Mystery for a while, Li Zixuan walked out of the room. In the front room, Han Lijing, Wang Zhong, and the others had returned and were chatting. Li Zixuan went forward to greet them and went to wash up. After eating the breakfast that Han Yushi had carefully prepared, Li Zixuan said goodbye to Han Lijing in the yard. "Uncle Han, sorry for disturbing you these 2 days. Uncle Han, please pay attention to the business. If you have any problems, please find Uncle Wang or go directly to Chang'an to find me. I'll be waiting for your fruit wine in Chang'an." "Young master, don't worry. I'll take care of the fruit wine. The road is slippery after the rain. Young master, please be careful." "Well, it's okay." Li Zixuan turned around and looked at Han Yushi, who was leaning against the door frame and silently watching him. This girl had noticed that her eyes were red since she saw her in the morning. Could it be that the story she told last night was too sad and she cried all night? He was also reluctant to part with this beautiful girl, but he had to go back. This was not his home. Li Zixuan actually enjoyed the quiet and elegant feeling when talking to Han Yushi, but he didn't know what Han Yushi thought of him. Maybe she had a little affection for him. He had a lot to say to her at this moment, but it was obviously not the right time. Thousands of words turned into a sigh in the end. "Yushi, take care." After that, he turned around and left with the group. Back home, Li Zixuan was dragged by his mother to enjoy her mother's love. He also told his mother about the purchase of the fruit wine. Mrs. Li didn't care much about the business. Since her son felt that it could make money, she would certainly support him. She gave Li Zixuan 1,000 strings of cash for him to use first. As for his father, his mother would talk to his mother. Li Zixuan was very happy to receive 1,000 strings of cash from the chairman of his family. It was good to be a rich second generation. If he liked a business, he could just ask his mother for money to invest. It was not like the time travel novels he read in his previous life. Some protagonists traveled to ancient times and had no money. They had to work hard to make glass and perfume to get their first venture capital. Li Zishuan said that it was too brain-intensive. He didn't want to do it for the time being. His family was already so rich. He didn't need to invent those inventions. What he needed to do now was to think of ways to spend money. A few days ago, his mother was still encouraging him to be a prodigal son. He had a long way to go. When he arrived at the West Court, he was about to go back to the study to plan the modification of the fruit wine when he found Lan waiting for him in the side hall of the West Court. Lan what's in the thing you're holding? Li Zishuan pointed at a thick bamboo tube in Lan hand and asked. This is Lan general, Wei Qing. He's amazing. Brother, let me show you. Lan handed over the bamboo tube in her hand as if she was presenting a treasure. Li Zishuan was puzzled. Wei Qing? What the hell? He took the bamboo tube and lifted the lid slightly. When he looked inside, he saw a green locust. Only then did he remember that the source of the conflict in the threshing field of the Han family village yesterday was the few of them fighting the locust. He didn't expect Lan to name this locust Wei Qing. Li Zishuan couldn't help but find it funny. However, Li Zishuan's smile froze on his face before it could bloom. Then, his expression changed slightly. The way he looked at Wei Qing became a little uncertain. Li Zishuan didn't study the history of the Tang Dynasty in detail in his previous life. However, he still knew some of the major events that happened in the Tang Dynasty. Some of them were from novels and some were from television dramas. Li Zishuan remembered that in the second year of the Jingguan era, the Tang Dynasty had an unprecedented locust plague. At that time, the locusts covered the sky and swept across the entire Guanzhong plain. The locusts covered the sky and poured down in torrents. Everywhere they passed, the land was barren. Even the trees and weeds couldn't escape from the locusts, not to mention the crops. Last year, Li Ergang and Xieli of the Turks had signed the humiliating Wei River Pact precisely to buy time for the Great Tang to breathe. The people of the Great Tang had just welcomed the peace that they had longed for. Who would have thought that they would have to face this apocalyptic disaster? In his previous life, Li Zishuan saw on some forums that when the locusts came, there were rumors among the people that this was God's punishment for Li Ergang killing his brothers and imprisoning his father to seize the throne. Li Ergang couldn't defend himself. The history books recorded, Taizong entered the garden to inspect the crop. When he saw the locusts, he plucked a few of them and cursed, "Man's life is the grain. If you eat it, you will harm the people. The people have sinned. You have spirit, but when you eat my heart, you will not harm the people." When he was about to swallow the locusts, he admonished him to the left and right, "I am afraid it will become a disease." "You must not," Taizong said. "I hope to remove the disaster, why should I avoid the disease?" When Li Zishuan saw this, he was quite shocked. It was not without reason that Li had become an eternal emperor. His breadth of mind, his bearing, and his charisma were things that ordinary people could not hope to achieve. Li Zishuan remembered that under the post, there were some keyboard warriors who commented that Li Ergang swallowed the locusts for show, to show that he loved the people like his own children. Li Zishuan snorted at this. Li Ergang swallowed the locusts despite the danger. No matter what his purpose was, he was worthy of respect. Li Zishuan asked himself if he was himself, he wouldn't dare to swallow the locust. Although the Tang Dynasty was beginning to show its prosperity, with the current foundation of the Tang Dynasty, it obviously couldn't withstand this catastrophe. Once the locusts came, starving people would be everywhere. There might even be a tragedy of people swapping their children for food. Then the question was, before the locusts came, what could he do for this era? Although he hadn't been in this world for long, there were already many people who cared about him and the people he cared about. For example, his family, Han Lijing, Han Yushi, and the simple and adorable villagers of the Han family village. At this moment, He realized that he had fallen in love with this era and the people of the Tang Dynasty. Brother? Lan Er noticed that Li Zixuan was staring at her Wei Qing without moving. She pushed his arm. Oh, Lan Er, go play with Xiao He and Xiao Shi first. I have something to do now. I will tell you a story tonight. Li Zixuan was interrupted by Lan Er and said to Lan Er, oh, then you must remember to tell Lan Er a story tonight. Lan Er was a little unhappy. She wanted to come over to show off her invincible general, Wei Qing, to her brother, but now that her brother seemed to have something to do, she could only leave. Inside the house, Li Zixuan was alone, frowning. He was thinking about how the main characters of the novels, who had transmigrated to the Tang Dynasty, solved the locusts' problem. He remembered that some people had brought potatoes with them when they transmigrated and promoted potato farming in the Tang Dynasty. This helped the people of the Tang Dynasty survive the locusts. This was a good idea. But he had transmigrated. Before he transmigrated, he couldn't have brought potatoes with him. What should he do? Should he tell Li Er directly and ask him to prepare in advance? No, first of all, he couldn't even see Li Er now. Even if he saw him and told him, he wouldn't believe him. Instead, he would be charged with the crime of misleading the public. Secondly, even if Li Er believed him, other than stockpiling food in advance, there were limited ways to do so. Li Zixuan rubbed his head in frustration. After thinking for a long time, he still couldn't think of a practical solution. Forget it, let's think about it slowly. After all, there was still more than a year before the locust. Chapter 32. This morning, Li Zixuan was practicing his sword on the lawn of the West Courtyard. Yes, he was practicing his sword. Not only did spiritual master Ling Su teach him internal strength, he also taught him sword skills. Taoist sword skills were quite diverse, and there were many powerful sword skills handed down from generation to generation. But spiritual master Ling Su was afraid that he would bite off more than he could chew, so he only taught him one sword skill, which was what Li Zixuan was practicing now. It was called the 9 Taishan swords. 9 swords didn't refer to 9 swords, but this sword skill contained 9 consecutive sword moves. The 9 Taishan swords was a supreme sword skill derived from Li Zixuan's internal strength. When it was used, the 9 consecutive moves were like a violent storm. The 9 moves connected in an endless stream, making people unable to cope. Moreover, each move would superimpose on the power of the last move. Under the superimposition of layers of power, the last move would be accompanied by the sound of thunder. Its speed would be like lightning and very difficult to block. After Li Zixuan obtained the memories of this body, he studied this sword skill in his heart for several days. As a modern person, Li Zixuan used to scoff at internal strength sword skills and the like. But after obtaining the memories of this body and looking at this sword skill again, he naturally had some understanding in his heart. This feeling was very magical. The 9 Taishan swords were: first sword riding wind, second sword fleeting swan, third sword treading snow, fourth sword breaking waves, fifth sword leaving dust, sixth sword flowing cloud, seventh sword phantom, eighth sword returning to origin, and ninth sword rushing thunder. The 9 sword skills matched the 9 levels of the Taishan Sutra. With Li Zixuan's current power, he could only use the first 5 moves of the 9 Taishan swords. But this was already very powerful. According to his master, with his current cultivation, no one in the younger generation in Jianghu could match him. Unless he met a reclusive master like his master, his life was not in danger under other circumstances. Spiritual master Ling Su had already practiced the 9th sword rushing thunder when he was alive. According to him, when he used the 9 swords in succession, even a great grandmaster expert could only hold back his hatred. But using the 9 swords in succession consumed a lot of energy. After using the 9 swords, he basically collapsed. Currently, the commonly recognized strength levels in Jianghu were: Qi drawing, body tempering, Qi forming, master, and great master. According to his master's introduction, there were only 3 martial grandmasters in the world today. His master was naturally one of them, and he was a peak existence. The other 2 were Shaolin Abbot Xian Kong and Tujue Imperial Advisor Wu Jie. As for the number of grandmasters, there were no clear records, but his master estimated that there were only a few dozen grandmasters in the world. In his memory, the current martial arts world wasn't as exaggerated as what was written in modern cultivation novels. Even a great grandmaster expert couldn't extend their lifespan by several hundred years. At most, they wouldn't get sick easily. Although his master had been a great grandmaster for many years, he couldn't escape from old age, sickness, and death. He passed away at the age of 125. In short, martial arts could only make people stronger and more agile. It would not allow people to transcend the category of humans and become immortals. They were just a little stronger than ordinary people. However, even a great grandmaster expert would not be willing to fight with a small army. Moreover, a great grandmaster wasn't an invincible existence. The gap between great grandmasters wasn't very large. If a great grandmaster was besieged by a dozen great grandmasters, he would still die. Li Zixuan's predecessor had reached the 5th layer of the Taishan Sutra a year ago. Currently, he was an expert at the peak of Qi forming. When he reached the 6th layer of the Taishan Sutra, he would enter the ranks of great grandmasters. The Taishan Sutra had 10 layers, but the Taishan 9 swords only had 9 sword moves. In his memory, his predecessor had asked his master why. Spiritual Master Ling Su only said that in the 1,000-year history of Taoism, no one had practiced the Taishan Sutra to the 10th layer, so at present, there was only the Taishan 9 swords. At this moment, in the west courtyard, Li Zixuan's figure changed. The 5 major sword moves, wind riding, graceful grace, snow treading, wave breaking, and dust parting, were used one after another. The grass around him swirled. Even the peach blossoms that had just bloomed on the 2 peach trees next to him were swept away by the strong wind brought by his sword Qi. For a moment, the courtyard was filled with sword light and the falling petals were a riot. It was very beautiful. Wow, brother is so powerful. Lan Er also wants to learn swordsmanship. Lan Er saw her brother flying around in the field with sword light shining in all directions. He was like a peerless sword immortal. She jumped and jumped around excitedly, shouting that she also wanted to learn this handsome swordsmanship. Xiao He and Xiao Shi's eyes were also filled with extraordinary splendor. They knew that their young master knew martial arts, but they didn't expect him to be so powerful. Especially when their young master was dancing with the sword, he was so handsome that their hearts were beating wildly. After practicing these 5 sword moves, Li Zixuan was also sweating slightly. He took the silk handkerchief that Xiao Shi handed over and wiped the sweat on his forehead. Then, he said to Lan Er, practicing martial arts is very tough. Do you really want to learn? Li Zixuan didn't want to teach his sister martial arts because it was too troublesome. This girl was obviously only enthusiastic for a short period of time. Moreover, to practice martial arts to his level, one must suffer a lot. He couldn't bear for his sister to suffer. Yes, Lan Er wants to learn. Lan Er is not afraid of suffering. Lan Er seemed to be very determined as she nodded her head. She was just captivated by her brother's handsome swordsmanship and really wanted to learn this swordsmanship. But to learn this swordsmanship, you have to wake up at 3 in the morning to practice. Moreover, you have to continue practicing regardless of whether it's winter or summer. When that time comes, our cute little Lan Er will become a Tan girl. Lan Er, do you still want to learn? Li Zixuan said in distress. Lan Er was a little hesitant. Which girl didn't want to be beautiful? Although Lan Er wasn't even 7 years old, this little girl had already started to want to be beautiful. She often asked Xiao Shi for advice on how to dress up. When she heard that practicing martial arts was so scary and that she had to get tanned, Lan was a little scared. Although the swordsmanship was handsome, she would become ugly if she got tanned. No matter how good the swordsmanship was, it was useless. Seeing that Lan was a little scared, Li Zixuan was a little proud. Just as he was about to turn around and return to his room, he heard Lan shouting, "No, smelly brother, you are lying. You wake up at 3 in the morning every day. You wake up later than Lan. Also, brother, your face is so white. You didn't get tanned at all." After Lan reacted, she immediately grabbed onto Li Zixuan and didn't let go. Damn, I didn't expect to be used as a model by my sister because I slept in. Li Zixuan was a little embarrassed. He could only justify himself. He lowered his body and looked into Lan's eyes. He tried to make his eyes look more sincere. Li Zixuan brewed his emotions and said to Lan, "Cough cough, Lan, your elder brother is one of those rare martial arts geniuses that only appear once in 100 years. It only took me 8 years of hard work to learn this martial art. It's very difficult for others to learn it as quickly as I do. As for why I didn't get tanned in the past 8 years, it can only be said that there is a type of skin that belongs to the natural beauty type. No matter how much you get tanned, you won't get tanned. Do you understand?" As he spoke, Li Zixuan was a little embarrassed to continue. "Damn, I have never seen such a shameless person." At this moment, Lan looked at Li Zixuan in surprise. It was as if she was meeting him for the first time. Her wide eyes were very cute. Lan held back for a long time, but she still said what was in her heart. "Brother, why are you so shameless? Lan is embarrassed to be your sister." Li Zixuan was speechless. There was silence all around. Then, there were 2 giggles. Xiao He and Xiao Shi saw that their young master had failed to fool around in front of Lan and finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. Li Zixuan was instantly attacked. His old face darkened. He glared at the 2 young maidservants who were gloating at his misfortune. He then looked at Lan and said sadly, "My heart hurts. Little sister, I have always been so nice to you. Is it really okay for you to insult me like this?" Hearing her brother's strange words, Lan was dumbfounded. Just as she was about to ask, she saw San Bao walking over. "Young master, the eldest son of the Qing family is waiting for you in the front hall. He said that he has something to talk to you about. Master is accompanying him at the side. He wants you to hurry over." San Bao came over and bowed to Li Zixuan. "Qing Chumo? Why is that guy looking for me? Does he want me to treat him to my chicken again?" Li Zixuan shuddered when he remembered the resentful look shopkeeper Lu gave Qing Chumo last time. He hoped that it wasn't like that. "Lan go play with Xiao He and Xiao Shi. Brother has something to do and will leave first." After Li Zixuan finished speaking to his sister, he turned around and rushed to the front hall. P.S. Regarding this book, Swordsman would like to say that the main plot of this book is still history. The addition of some martial arts is just to let the main character act cool in the Tang Dynasty. This book doesn't give the main character a heaven-defying system, but it's not too much to give him some martial arts. Furthermore, the Tang Dynasty originally had a culture of chivalry throughout the country. From the Li Tang Dynasty's rebellion against the Sui Dynasty, to the Xuanwu Gate incident of Li Shimin, and then to the Tang Dynasty's foreign wars, there were the shadows of chivalrous men in the Jianghu. It was not nonsense to add elements of chivalry into the book. This book will use history as the main plot and describe the magnificent history. There will also be some chivalrous and tender feelings in the Jianghu. Martial arts is not the same as fantasy. There won't be any nonsense like summoning the wind and summoning the rain. Wanderers were a respected profession in the Tang Dynasty. Without wanderers, the Li Tang Dynasty would not be able to overthrow the Sui Dynasty. Li Shimin would not be able to rely on a coup d'état to take the throne. After the Tang Dynasty was unified, wanderers started to join the army to prove their worth. Many wanderers walked the path of joining the army, making contributions, and receiving titles. Chang and returned to wanderers. Luoyang was rich and talented. Jade sword and floating cloud ride, golden saddle and moon bow. Fighting cock over Wei Bei, riding horse to Guangdong. Sun Bin waits from afar, Guojie secretly communicates. Without 1,000 gold titles, who would talk about 10,000 miles of merit? The general descends from the sky, riding into the clouds. The fire of the beacon is like the moon at night, the aura of the soldiers is like a rainbow at dawn. Running amuck with friends, carrying feathers to join the army. Dragon banners dim the fog, bird formations sweep up the cold wind. Chasing to the Hanhai Pass, after the battle the mountains are empty. Returning to thank the Son of Heaven, why not ride a horse? One of the 4 heroes of the Tang Dynasty, Lu Xiaolin's journey to the youth field was the most realistic portrayal of the Tang Dynasty wanderers joining the army to defend the country. It reproduced the heroic scenes of wanderers fighting on the border, fighting on horseback and not fearing death. Apart from that, wanderers were also a spiritual idol with symbolic meaning in the Tang Dynasty society. In the strong and prosperous Tang Dynasty, the chivalrous spirit of the people who worshipped martial arts was in line with the spirit of the times. Hence, it was not surprising that there were many wanderers in the Tang Dynasty. Adding martial arts elements in this book was also reasonable. As for the division of martial arts in this book, it was purely made up. Scholars should not take it seriously with the swordsman. Chapter 33. In the front hall, Li Jingma was chatting with Qing Chumo. He was quite happy that his son was able to make friends with the son of Duke Lu. It wasn't that he liked to cling to the rich and powerful, but that his son had Qing Chumo as a friend. His son's safety would be much better in the future. However, Qing Chumo felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Although Li Jingma was only a merchant, he had a wide range of knowledge and experience, and his style of conversation was quite good. Qing Chumo was an old man with a rough temperament, and was not suitable for such a scholarly conversation. "Nephew, is Duke Lu still in good health?" Li Jingma asked gently. In fact, he was also anxious. After chatting with Qing Chumo for so long, he was almost done with all the polite greetings. Why was that brat still not here? He was really itching for a beating. He would teach him a lesson later. Qing Chumo tried his best to pretend to be a well-read and modest young master. He replied politely, "Thank you for your concern, uncle. My father is well. As long as he's healthy." Li Jingma stroked his short beard and nodded with satisfaction. Then, he didn't know what to say. This was the first time he had met Qing Chumo. He had already said everything he needed to say. Father Li was secretly anxious. Finally, at this moment, footsteps came from outside the door. The two of them heaved a sigh of relief. Qing Chumo thought to himself, "I'm finally free. If it were anyone else who dared to dawdle with me for so long, I would have beaten them up long ago. Unfortunately, this is my good brother's father. I can't beat him up." Li Zishuan walked through the door and greeted his father first. Old man Li nodded, stood up, and smiled. "Since you're here, treat nephew Chonyo well. You mustn't be rude. You youngsters should have a good chat. This old man won't be an eyesore here, hee. The two of them stood up to send Li Jingma off. After he left, Qing Chumo sat down on a chair and crossed his legs. He didn't seem to be sitting upright at all. Li Zishuan did not care about these things. He asked, "Brother Chonyo, why are you looking for me today?" Knowing that Qing Chumo didn't like beating around the bush, Li Zishuan simply asked directly. A trace of helplessness flashed in Qing Chumo's eyes as he said, "My father wants to see you. He wants you to come to my house for a meal." Li Zishuan was a little suspicious. "Why would Lu Guogong want to see me? Could it be that you said something bad about me in front of him?" Then, he silently stared at Qing Chumo. Qing Chumo felt a little guilty under his stare, but he still stiffened his neck and said, What are you talking about? How could I, Ching Chumo, harm my own brother? It's really just a meal. Li Zixuan stared at Ching Chumo for a long time. Although he still felt that something was wrong, he couldn't find any flaws for the time being. All right then, I'll pay a visit to Duke Lu. What does your father like? It's not good to go empty-handed on my first visit, right? Ching Chumo impatiently waved his hand. You don't need to bring anything. Come with me. Then, he suddenly paused as if he had thought of something. He licked his lips and said embarrassedly, my father likes to eat that gnawed chicken. Xiaoxian, do you want to bring some? Li Zixuan laughed heartily. Ha, no problem. I was wondering what it was. I'll tell the kitchen to make 10 servings of gnawed chicken and bring them to Uncle Cheng. Then, he went out to instruct the kitchen. The cook of the Li family, Auntie Zhao, had already learned how to make gnawed chicken under Li Zixuan's guidance. Although it couldn't compare to the taste of the drunken immortal restaurant, if one didn't taste it carefully, one wouldn't be able to taste the difference. Wait. Ching Chumo pulled Li Zixuan back. His face was full of shame. He carefully gestured with one finger and said, This, my father said, to let you make a pot of gnawed chicken and bring it over. A pot? Damn, were all the people in old Cheng's family animals like this? Did they eat by the pot? Li Zixuan staggered and almost sprained his waist. On Vermilion Bird Avenue, the two of them rode their horses toward Wide Lane. However, Ching Chumo's riding posture was very strange. He held the reins in one hand and a super-large food box under his waist with the other. Under the strange gazes of the passers-by, he used his leg to lightly kick the belly of the black horse under him, urging it to go faster. There was no other way. Ching Chumo felt a little embarrassed for his father, who would invite someone to a meal and then plunder a pot of delicious food from someone else's house. It was so embarrassing. Li Zixuan looked at Ching Chumo from behind. It was rare to see the usually carefree Ching Chumo embarrassed. He found it quite interesting. The two of them, one in front and one behind, urged their horses forward. Soon, they arrived at the gate of the Qing mansion. Looking at the two majestic stone lions and a pair of drum stones in front of the gate of the Qing mansion, Li Zixuan felt a little envious. Previously, he also wanted to get 2 stone lions in front of his house, but he was scolded by his father when he found out. These things could not be bought with money. Although the Li family was rich, they were still businessmen and did not have the qualifications to buy such things in front of their house. Walking into the Qing mansion, Ching Chumo pulled a servant over and asked where his father was. Then, he turned to Li Zixuan and said, Xiaoxian, my father is now practicing martial arts in the backyard. It's still early for lunch. Come with me to pay a visit to my father. Li Zixuan nodded and agreed. Well, there's no hurry to eat. We should pay a visit to the old duke first. He was also very curious about the famous historical figure Qing Yaojin. He had seen many versions of Qing Yaojin on TV, but he had never seen the real person. Li Zixuan felt a little excited that he was about to meet this amazing person who had left a deep mark in the history of the great Tang Empire. Although the Qing mansion was not luxurious, it still occupied a large area. The two of them passed through several pavilions and buildings before arriving at the backyard of the Qing mansion. Contrary to Li Zixuan's expectations, the backyard of the Qing family was rather large. There was even a martial arts stage in the middle of the lawn. On top of it were 18 different types of weapons. A black-clothed brawny man with a full beard was currently wielding a pair of giant axes. He was swinging them up and down in a vigorous manner. Even from afar, Li Zixuan could feel the strong wind coming from the axes. An expert. This was an expert whose skills were at least not below his own. Li Zixuan instantly made this judgment. Seeing that the black-clothed man's face was somewhat similar to Ching Chumo's, Li Zixuan guessed that this man was most likely Qing Yaojin. Following Ching Chumo, he walked towards the man. When the burly man sensed someone approaching, He put down his axe and turned his head to look. He saw his son and a tall and handsome young man walking over. Qing Yaojin laughed heartily and jumped down from the martial arts stage. His voice could be heard even before he reached the stage. "Haha, you must be the new brother that my Chonyo has been talking about. Not bad, not bad. Your body is strong and healthy and you are born with good looks." When Qing Yaojin came forward, Qing Chumo called him father. Li Zixuan hurriedly came forward and clasped his fist respectfully. "Greetings, High Duke Liu." Qing Yaojin patted Li Zixuan's shoulder and laughed. "Haha, don't be so courteous. My Qing family doesn't like these complicated formalities. Since my Chonyo has acknowledged you as his brother, we will be family in the future. Come, let's talk in the front hall." The three of them walked towards the front yard. Chapter 34. Qing Yaojin was chatting with Li Zixuan in the front hall, mainly to learn about Li Zixuan's past. At this time, a pretty servant girl came in and bowed to Qing Yaojin. "Master, the food is ready. Do you want to eat now?" Qing Yaojin waved his hand. "Ha, then serve the food." The servant girl accepted the order and left. At this time, Qing Yaojin said to Li Zixuan, "Today, thanks to nephew, I can eat chicken again. Ha! Your family's drunken immortal restaurant is too stingy, limiting the amount every day. I can't eat enough." Li Zixuan stood up and said, "This nephew didn't think it through. Since Uncle Qing wants to eat, why don't you send a cook to my house to learn how to make this dish? This way, Uncle Qing can eat as much as you want in the future." Qing Yaojin was moved, but he still pretended to be reserved. "How can this be? This method of eating chicken is your family's drunken immortal restaurant's business secret. How can it be spread? I, old Qing, will not do such an unkind thing." Finished speaking, he looked at Li Zixuan. His eyes were clearly saying, "Come and refute me, come and convince me." Sure enough, Li Zixuan was very cooperative. "Uncle Qing, what are you saying? This little bit of food can at most be exchanged for some stinky things. Since Uncle Qing likes to eat it, there's no harm in teaching it to the Qing estate's kitchen maids. In addition, this nephew believes that the Qing family's servants will not spread the method of eating chicken." Moreover, there was one point that Li Zixuan did not mention. Although the method of eating chicken was novel, in less than a month, there would be other restaurants that could imitate it. Qing Yaojin was a little surprised. Merchants valued profits. Previously, he had looked down on Li Zixuan because of his family's business. He did not expect that this child would value profits more than righteousness. What he said before was also a test for Li Zixuan. "Good, you are an interesting child. You are not like other merchants who stink of money. Haha, come and eat. The two of you are not allowed to fight with me for the chicken for lunch. You must have eaten enough before, haha." Qing Yaojin saw the servant girl bring in the dishes. He happily patted Li Zixuan's shoulder and invited him to the table to eat together. Li Zixuan only felt a huge force on his shoulder. If it wasn't for his good martial arts, with Li Zixuan's physique in modern society, Qing Yaojin's slap would definitely have slapped him to the floor. As for Qing Yaojin's shameless words, he didn't care at all. He was indeed a little tired of eating chicken. However, Qing Chumo was not tired of eating it. On the way back, he was carrying a big box of food. Although he was a little embarrassed, he was still secretly happy. He thought that his father would not be able to finish all the chicken and that he would be able to get a share. He did not expect that before the chicken was even served, his father would mercilessly extinguish his hopes. He did not dare to argue with his father. Old Qing would not reason with him and would only talk with his fist. Qing Chumo sat next to Li Zixuan and ate the rest of the dishes fiercely while looking at his father eating. Delicious. Little Xian, you don't have to be polite. Other than this, you can eat whatever you want. Qing Yaojin stuffed a mouthful of chicken meat into his mouth and chewed as he called out to Li Zixuan. Then, He felt that his mouth was a little dry, so he poured himself a bowl of wine and ate the chicken meat while drinking by himself. He even forgot to call out to Li Zixuan to drink. Li Zixuan's mouth twitched. However, he was happy that Qing Yaojin did not persuade him to drink. Otherwise, if Qing Yaojin insisted that he drink, he really could not think of an excuse to refuse. He definitely could not use the excuse he used to fool Qing Chumo. If he dared to say that to old Qing, Li Zixuan believed that Qing Yaojin would definitely beat him to death. After the meal, everyone ate and drank to their heart's content. Of course, Qing Chumo was an exception. This fellow did not have a good meal. After the servant girls removed the banquet, Qing Yaojin rubbed his swollen belly and let out a comfortable groan. He picked his teeth and said to Li Zixuan, "Little Xian, your chicken is so delicious. Little Xian, the chicken you gnawed on is really too delicious. I, old Qing, have lived for more than half of my life and have never eaten anything so delicious. How did you think of this thing?" Li Zixuan looked at Qing Yaojin, who did not care about his image, and said, "This was taught by my master. My master not only taught me martial arts, but also taught me some cooking, arithmetic, and the art of investigating things." That Taoist priest spirit void? Qing Yaojin had heard Qing Chumo talk about Li Zixuan's master before. Li Zixuan nodded. Qing Yaojin said curiously, "I only heard that Taoist priest spirit void has great achievements, but I have never heard that he also knows how to cook? Was his lie about to be exposed?" Li Zixuan was a little flustered, but he still forced himself to be calm and asked, "Uncle Qing, you know my master?" Qing Yaojin shook his head, a look of reminiscence on his face. "How could I know such an immortal? I only heard of your master when I was in Wagong more than 10 years ago. At the end of the Sui dynasty, the world was in chaos. The Turks wanted to take advantage of the situation in the Central Plains. They burned, killed, looted, and committed all kinds of crimes. But at that time, the Central Plains was in chaos. There was no extra force to resist the harassment of the Turks. Once, a small group of over 200 Turkic wolf riders was raiding a village to the south of the Ain Mountains. An old man in a green Taoist robe came with a sword in his hand. He fought the 200 Turkic wolf riders alone and killed them one after another. Then, he piled the heads of the Turks on the border between the grassland and the Ain Mountains. He set up a huge rock and wrote a cross on it, "Those who offend the Central Plains will be killed." Spirit void. When this news spread, the world was shocked. In those years, although a large number of powerful martial artists emerged from all over the world, no one dared to face a regular army of more than 50 people, not to mention more than 200 Turks with outstanding combat power. This kind of combat power was simply shocking. Taoist priest Spirit Void became famous because of this battle. After that battle, Taoist priest Spirit Void floated away, and no trace of him could be seen. Later, although the Turks occasionally went south to take advantage of the situation, they did not dare to act like before. At best, they would massacre villages and cities. At most, they would rob the food of the people at the border. "Brat, you're quite lucky to have such a godly figure as your master." Speaking of this, Qing Yaojin's face was full of emotions. He touched the big beard on his chin and suddenly looked at Li Zixuan. He said with interest, "Since your master is Taoist priest Spirit Void, your martial arts must be quite good. Come and spar with me, old Qing." After saying this, he began to rub his fists, eager to give it a try. Li Zixuan was listening to Qing Yaojin talk about his master's bravery from the side. His master had never told him about these things before. Who knew that Qing Yaojin would then propose to spar with him? Li Zixuan's face was full of black lines. This Qing Yaojin was like an elder, but with his rough temper, he did not know how to control his strength. Li Zixuan was not willing to spar with him. Li Zixuan hurriedly cupped his hands and declined. "My martial arts are low. How could I dare to spar with Uncle Qing?" Qing Yaojin patted him on the shoulder and said carelessly, You're so wishy-washy like a girl. What are you afraid of if your martial arts are not good? Just as well, old Qing can give you some pointers. I'll teach you a few moves, ha. Then, without waiting for Li Zixuan's agreement, he pulled Li Zixuan to the practice field in the backyard. Qing Chumo also followed quickly, worried. Chapter 35. Duke Lu's Mansion, Martial Arts Practice Field. Qing Yaojin took a lance from the weapon rack and said to Li Zixuan, "The 2 axes from before were too heavy. I was afraid they would hurt you, so I will use this lance to spar with you." "Boy, what weapon are you going to use? Go and pick one." Li Zixuan did not bring his sword with him, but even if he did, he was too embarrassed to use it because it was too sharp. Since he could not refuse this duel, Li Zixuan had no choice but to pick a long sword. Isn't there a saying? Life is like that. Since you can't refuse it, then you should enjoy it. It just so happens that Li Zixuan needed some real combat experience to improve his martial arts. This sword was slightly light in his hand, not as heavy as his chasing wind sword, and not as sharp as his chasing wind sword. However, it was still a good sword. Li Zixuan casually swung the sword a few times to get used to the weight of the sword. Qing Yaojin saw Li Zixuan's standard movements and his eyes lit up. He praised, "Hey boy, you are also a sword master." Li Zixuan's forehead was full of black lines. He almost cursed out loud. In his heart, he cursed, "You are the one who is a sword master." When Li Zixuan saw Qing Yaojin practicing in the martial arts practice field, he knew that Qing Yaojin's skills were not below his. He did not waste any time and poured his internal energy into the long sword. He took the initiative to attack. The first style of Taishan 9 swords, ride the wind. Li Zixuan held his sword and rode the wind. Qing Yaojin's pupils shrunk as he thought to himself, "What a fast sword." Indeed, a great teacher produces a great disciple. He put away his contempt and held his lance as he flew up to meet the enemy head-on. No matter how fast this sword was, he, Qing Yaojin, would not retreat. The sword and lance collided in the air, producing a sonorous sound of metal. Then, both of them were sent flying back. Qing Yaojin was forced back 2 or 3 steps, while Li Zixuan was forced back 10 steps. It was clear that in the first round of confrontation, Li Zixuan was completely defeated in terms of strength. Li Zixuan was not discouraged. As soon as he landed and stabilized his body, the second style of Taishan 9 swords came right after. The sword in Li Zixuan's hand moved even faster, its trajectory like a flying dragon soaring in the sky. Carrying the remaining power of the first sword, riding the wind, its trajectory was like a flying dragon soaring in the sky, erratic. Qing Yaojin was also unable to predict the trajectory of the sword. He could only wield the lance in his hand in a vigorous manner, not allowing even a drop of water to leak out. At this moment, Qing Yaojin suddenly felt a chill behind his back. He immediately knew that something was wrong, but it was too late to turn around. He could only rely on his many years of experience in life and death battles to thrust the lance in his hand behind him with all his strength. A loud and clear sword hum could be heard from behind him. Li Zixuan's sword had been blocked. Li Zixuan also knew that this was not enough to stop Qing Yaojin. He immediately changed his move. The third style of Taishan 9 swords, snow treading, left no trace. Li Zixuan's footsteps constantly changed. He waved his sword in all directions. For a moment, only the sound of sword and lance clashing could be heard. After more than 10 attacks, Li Zixuan changed his move again. He used the fourth style of Taishan 9 swords, Wave Breaker. Wave Breaker was furious. Li Zixuan's momentum changed. He stepped on the ground and his whole body soared into the air. He raised his long sword and bent his waist. His whole body bent into a circle. Then, he and his sword were like a large wheel with sharp blade. He spun rapidly. It was as if he was riding the wind and breaking the wave. He flew towards Qing Yaojin. Facing this ferocious and bizarre sword, Qing Yaojin turned pale with fright. He no longer dared to hold back. Both of his feet fiercely stomped on the ground, causing the martial arts stage to rumble. Qing Yaojin also soared into the sky, using his horse lance as a battle axe. He used the flying axe to attack Li Zixuan. The two collided fiercely in the air. It was like a comet hitting the earth. The rumbling sound spread throughout the Qing mansion. The sword and lance separated upon contact. The two were once again sent flying. The difference was that this time, Qing Yaojin retreated 5 steps before stabilizing himself. Li Zixuan only retreated 8 steps before stabilizing himself. Li Zixuan used 4 swords in succession. The power stacked layer by layer. In terms of strength, the gap between him and Qing Yaojin became smaller and smaller. After stabilizing himself, Li Zixuan did not stop. Using the power of the first 4 swords, he continued to use the 5th sword of the 9 Taishan swords, absolute dust. After fighting for so long, he could see that Qing Yaojin was a master. Even if he was not in his prime, he could still block his sword. Therefore, he used the 5th sword with all his strength. The sword was bleak and cold. The cold light at the tip of the sword emitted a bright light. This sword, absolute dust, arrived in a flash. Qing Yaojin had fought for many years, but he had never seen such a fast sword. He roared. Relying on his many years of battle experience, he predicted the direction. Using all his strength, he fiercely smashed the lance in his hand towards the sword tip. Suddenly, the stage was filled with smoke and dust. After a while, the smoke and dust dispersed. The two people in the stage were standing facing each other. However, the lance was broken and the sword tip was damaged. Both sides were injured. Qing Chumo was below the stage. Since Li Zixuan used the first sword, his mouth had not closed. He had judged that Li Zixuan's martial arts were above his, but he did not expect that his martial arts would be so powerful. He could even fight his father to a standstill. His father was a veteran who had experienced hundreds of battles on the battlefield. People called him the devil incarnate. What kind of monster was this brother of his? He was younger than him by 2 years, but his martial arts were comparable to his father's. Watching Li Zixuan's dazzling swordsmanship raining down like a torrential storm, his father was barely able to resist by relying solely on his advantage in strength and years of battle experience. No matter how stupid Qing Chumo was, he knew that Li Zixuan's martial arts were not on the same level as his own. Li Zixuan had already begun to draw closer to the masters of the older generation. Comparisons were odious. Qing Chumo's little heart had received tens of thousands of blows. Haha, not bad, not bad. Little Xian, you've reached the peak of qi transformation at such a young age. The younger generation will surpass us in time. I haven't had such a good fight in a long time, ha ha. Qing Yaojin threw away the broken lance in his hand and laughed loudly. His laughter was so loud that it reached the clouds. He stepped forward and squeezed Li Zixuan's shoulder, sighing with emotion. In this battle, Li Zixuan had used his full strength for the first time. He had also fought to his heart's content. He threw the sword in his hand into the weapon rack and wiped the sweat off his face. He modestly said to Qing Yaojin, "Uncle Qing is too kind. Thank you for holding back. Otherwise, this nephew would not have been able to last until the end." He was right. If Qing Yaojin had used his full strength from the beginning, he would not have had the chance to use these 5 swords. After all, there was an absolute gap in strength. In the end, he was able to tie with Qing Yaojin. On one hand, Qing Yaojin was old and definitely not as strong as he was in his prime. On the other hand, he relied entirely on the mysteries of the 9 Taishan swords. Every move was linked and the power was constantly superimposed. Qing Yaojin laughed and waved his hand. "If I say you're strong, then you're strong. What's there to be modest about? You're too hypocritical. Young people should be arrogant." Don't be like those old scholars who are sour. What else could Li Zishuan say? These words could be said by Qing Yaojin, but he could not say it himself. He was also very helpless. He could only bow and accept the advice. Uncle Qing is right. Qing Yaojin sighed in admiration. Your swordsmanship is exquisite. On the battlefield, I have always liked to use my strength to defeat 10 people. No matter who the opponent is, I'll smash them to death with an axe. I didn't expect that when you fully used this sword move, the power that erupted would not lose to mine. It's not easy for you to cultivate to the Qi transformation realm at such a young age. I never expected that you would be able to fight a great master with your Qi transformation realm cultivation. You really are worthy of being the disciple of an immortal. I, Qing Yaojin, am completely convinced by Priest Spirit Void. Li Zishuan bowed and cupped his fists. Uncle Qing is too serious. How can my insignificant martial arts compare to Uncle Qing's? My master also praised Uncle Qing's courage and loyalty when he was alive. He often mentioned you in front of this nephew. Qing Yaojin's expression shook and he asked urgently, "What? You're saying that Priest Spirit Void has passed away?" He had heard from Qing Chumo that Li Zishuan had taken Spiritual Master Spirit Void as his master when he was young, but he really did not know that he had passed away. Hearing this, he was extremely shocked. Li Zishuan's expression also darkened and he replied, "My master passed away 3 months ago from Mount Longhu." Hearing this, Qing Yaojin's expression was complicated. He pinched his beard and sighed heavily. I didn't expect that even an immortal like Priest Spirit Void would not be able to escape death. Alas! Chapter 36. In the backyard of the Qing mansion. Qing Yaojin sighed with emotion. Suddenly, he thought of something and looked at Li Zishuan with a smile. "Boy, your kung fu is so good. Are you willing to go to the army to gain some military merits and be bestowed with a title?" Li Zishuan's heart skipped a beat. He knew he was in trouble. He quickly shook his head and said, "Uncle Qing, I've been away from home for many years and have yet to fulfill my filial duties. I really don't want to be away from home." After a pause, he continued, "But if one day the foreign tribes in the north dare to covet the national treasure of the Central Plains, I'm willing to go to war and be a small soldier in the border army. Just like my master, I'm willing to go to war and protect the country." The main reason was that Li Zishuan was lazy and didn't want to be restricted by the army. Thus, he declined Qing Yaojin's offer on the grounds of filial piety. But the second half of his sentence was also sincere. If the Turks really attacked the Tang Empire, he would also go to war in armor. He couldn't disgrace the reputation of Priest Spirit Void. Besides, if the Central Plains were to fall into the hands of the foreign races, the tens of millions of Han would definitely be massacred. He had many loved ones in Great Tang, and if he wanted to live a peaceful life as a wealthy man, he needed a stable external environment. When Qing Yaojin heard Li Zishuan mention filial piety, he frowned slightly but didn't insist. He knew the situation of Li Zishuan's family. He was the only child. Although he was good at kung fu, the battlefield was ever-changing. No one could guarantee his safety. If anything happened to him, Qing Yaojin would be too ashamed to tell his parents. When he heard the second half of Li Zishuan's words, Qing Yaojin's heart warmed. He secretly thought that this boy was a good seedling. After pondering for a while, he said to Li Zishuan, "Since it's like this, I, old Qing, won't say anything more. If you change your mind one day, come and tell me. How can a dignified man stay at home and wait for death? My Tang Empire's men naturally have to earn military merit. Go back and think about it." After saying that, he patted Li Zishuan and left alone. At this time, only Li Zishuan and Qing Chumo were left in the backyard. Li Zishuan stood on the side and carefully considered Qing Yaojin's words. After a long while, he shook his head and said to himself, "I'll just be a rich man. At present, the great Tang is still filled with fierce generals and powerful soldiers. The borders are safe and secure. There's really no need for me. He knew that Qing Yaojin was saying these words to him because he cherished talent and wanted to guide the younger generation. He was very grateful to Qing Yaojin for thinking highly of him, but he had no plans to join the army at the moment. Having lost the familial love, friendship, and love of his previous life, Li Zixuan wanted to live well for himself in this life. Qing Chumo walked over and touched Li Zixuan's shoulder. He looked at him with a strange expression and said, He looked at Qing Yaojin and said with a strange expression, Xiaoxian, you really hid it from me. I didn't expect you to be so secretive. Li Zixuan smiled and said, Brother Chonyo, I didn't hide it from you. You didn't ask me about my martial arts before, right? Qing Chumo looked up and thought about it. It was true. He had only estimated Li Zixuan's martial arts based on his experience. He thought that even if Li Zixuan was better than him, the difference wouldn't be too big. Now it seemed that it was just his wishful thinking. Qing Chumo patted Li Zixuan's shoulder dejectedly and said, Xiaoxian, your martial arts are really good. Other than Uncle Qin and Uncle Yuqi, I haven't seen anyone who can force my father into such a difficult situation. Moreover, you're younger than me by 2 years. Today, I've been dealt a blow by you. Li Zixuan saw that Qing Chumo's mood seemed to be a little down. He patted his shoulder and comforted him. Brother Chonyo, what are you saying? You and I are brothers. If you need help, how can I not help? No matter how good my martial arts are, I wouldn't use it against my own brother, right? Qing Chumo thought about it. That's right. If that's the case, won't I have such a great master to help me when I fight in the future? Thinking of this, Qing Chumo chuckled and said, Xiaoxian, I like your words. Haha, you're indeed a good brother. If one day I get into a fight with someone, you have to remember to help me. Li Zixuan was speechless. This idiot, he really didn't know what to say to him. Qing Chumo was happy for a while. He then touched Li Zixuan and asked, Xiaoxian, what my father said, are you really not going to reconsider it? My father wants to send me to the Northern Army next year to gain some military merit. Do you want to go with me? With our martial arts, we'll definitely be able to gallop on the battlefield and kill the Turks until they piss their pants. Ha! Li Zixuan shook his head expressionlessly and said, I don't want to join the army for the time being. I have to stay at home and fulfill my filial duties. When I change my mind, I'll come and talk to Uncle Qing. Qing Chumo chuckled and said, Haha, make it up, keep making it up. Do you think I don't know you? You're just lazy and don't want to go to the battlefield. That's why you're using this excuse to fool my father, right? If my father finds out, he'll beat you to death. Ha! After saying that, he looked at Li Zixuan with a gloating expression. Li Zixuan's face was full of black lines. He didn't expect this idiot to see through him. He said unhappily, Oh, I just remembered that my cook went home to visit her parents. I'm afraid she won't be back for the next 2 months. The cook from the public house shouldn't come to my house for the time being, right? This idiot just called him brother, and now he wanted to betray him. Qing Chumo immediately panicked and said shamelessly, Don't, I said the wrong thing. Xiaoxian, you're really a filial son. The heavens can be my witness. At this moment, Qing Chumo really hated himself for speaking the truth. If because of this sentence, his family could only eat chicken 2 months later, even if he was not beaten to death by his own father, he would regret it to death. Looking at this scoundrel, Li Zixuan laughed and said, But why did I hear someone say that I'm lazy by nature and that I'm using filial piety as an excuse to avoid joining the army? Qing Chumo stuttered for a while, then he stretched his neck exaggeratedly and looked around. He said, Who said that? Why didn't I hear it? Xiaoxian, you must have heard wrongly. Oh, there was a dog barking here just now. You must have heard wrongly. Li Zixuan looked around and asked curiously, Where's the dog here? Qing Chumo stretched his neck and said, Why not? Look, it's right behind you, woof, woof. Li Zixuan had just turned around when Ching Chumo immediately mimicked a dog and barked 3 times. Ching Chumo shouted. The dog ran away. It barked just now. Did you hear it? Li Zixuan was speechless. This idiot was going all out in order to eat the chicken as soon as possible. He said helplessly, "Okay, I just remembered. I seem to have remembered wrongly. It wasn't my cook. It was my mother's maid who wanted to go home to visit her parents." Ching Chumo was furious. He didn't expect to be tricked by Li Zixuan. He pointed at him and shouted, "Good boy, you dare to lie to me." After saying that, he rolled up his sleeves and was about to beat him up. But he didn't think about it. With his martial arts, he didn't know who would be the one to beat who. In an instant, the backyard of the Ching residence was filled with smoke and dust. Then came Ching Chumo's wailing and howling. "Oh, damn it. We agreed not to hit people in the face. You're really shameless. I'm going to cut ties with you." Oh. Chapter 37. The sun was setting. Li Zixuan was in a very good mood after beating up this idiot who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Under the strange gaze of the Ching family's housekeeper, he left Ching Chumo lying on the ground with a bloody nose and a swollen face. How many people in Chang'an City could beat up Lu Guogong's son without fear of retaliation? "I'm just that awesome, humph." Li Zixuan was secretly pleased. The next day, Li Zixuan woke up early for the first time. He didn't know why he couldn't fall asleep. Maybe it was because he had been home for so many days and slept in every day. Plus, there wasn't much entertainment at night, so he went to bed early. After washing up, he went to the front hall. His parents and Lan'er were preparing to eat. "Hey, let's eat together." Li Zixuan quickly went in and sat beside Lan'er. "Oh my, did the sun rise from the west today? Our young Master Li woke up so early?" Father Li saw Li Zixuan coming over to eat breakfast with them and teased him as if he was an alien. Li Zixuan's mouth twitched. He didn't know what was wrong with his father. Last time he woke up late, he scolded him. This time he woke up early, he was still scolding him. Just as he was about to speak, he saw that his mother couldn't sit still. "How can you talk to Xian like that? Speaking so strangely early in the morning. You'll sleep in the study tonight," Mrs. Li said angrily as she pinched Father Li's waist. Father Li grimaced from the pinch. His face darkened when he heard his wife's last sentence. He secretly hated himself for having such a cheap mouth. He stopped talking and buried his head in the food. Li Zixuan was amused, but he didn't dare to laugh out loud. Lan'er didn't care so much. Seeing this scene, she was so happy that she couldn't stop giggling. "Ha ha, that's great, that's great. Lan'er can finally sleep with Mom tonight." Father Li almost vomited blood when he heard this. He had doted on his daughter for nothing. "Father, Mother, yesterday at the house of High Duke, Lu Guogong saw that I was good at martial arts, so he asked me if I wanted to join the army. He wants me to go to the army to gain experience." The family laughed and joked for a while before Li Zixuan began to talk about business. A trace of worry and anxiety flashed across Mrs. Li's face. Mr. Li was stunned for a moment. He pondered for a while and said slowly, "Since Lu Guogong said so, it means that he thinks highly of you and wants to promote you. It's your fortune. As the saying goes, scholars, farmers, workers, and merchants. Although my Li family is rich, in the end, we are only merchants. My great Tang was founded on martial prowess. Duke of Lu, your actions are to pave the way for your future. I didn't think that Xian would have such an opportunity." "Xian, did you agree with him?" Sigh, listening to Dad's words, it further proves that the status of merchants is indeed low. It seems that I have to find an opportunity to make a contribution and become a marquis or a duke so that Dad and Mom can be happy. Does this guy think that marquis and dukes are cabbages? Interrupting his thoughts, Li Zixuan shook his head at Dad and said, "I didn't agree. I've been away from home for 8 years and have just returned. I haven't fulfilled my filial duties in front of my parents, so how can I go to the battlefield?" Mrs. Lee heard and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. She was gratified and happy. Her son had been away from home for so many years and finally came back. She was really worried that her son would go to war. She didn't expect her son to be successful, just safe and sound. Mr. Lee heard and sighed softly. He was a little disappointed but also relieved. He asked, "Then Lu Guogong didn't blame you, right?" Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Father, Lu Guogong is such a person. Why would he blame me for such a small matter? Besides, Ching Chumo and I are good brothers. He treats me like a nephew." Mr. Lee heard and finally breathed a sigh of relief. He was also happy for his son's encounter. He smiled and said, "If that's the case, then little Xian, you should interact more with the House of Duke in the future. Don't treat this friendship coldly." He was already old and didn't care about fame and fortune. However, he had to consider Li Zixuan's future. "Father, I'm not the kind of person who fawns over those in power." Li Zixuan turned his head and looked at the sky at a 45-degree angle. He said proudly and playfully, "Little brat, I'm doing this for you. Who are you calling a fawning over those in power? I think you're itching for a beating again, aren't you?" Old Man Li was furious. He. Lan giggled happily at the side. Mrs. Lee looked at them and smiled. This is what a family should be like. It's good to have a family reunion. Brother, it's so boring. Why don't you tell Lan some more stories? Lan followed her brother to the west courtyard after breakfast. However, she didn't see anything interesting. She just wanted to listen to stories. This girl had been sticking to him all the time recently. Li Zixuan squatted down and casually plucked a weed in front of him. He twisted it a few times in his hand and said gloomily, "Didn't I already tell you Journey to the West? What else is there to tell?" The Journey to the West in his stomach had already been tricked by Lan with all kinds of excuses. For example, one day Lan ran over to him with a frightened expression and yelled, "Brother, brother, Lan just saw such a big rat in the room." Lan was scared to death. "Brother, quickly tell Lan Journey to the West to calm her nerves." This girl's expression and actions were really on point. They were so vivid and lifelike. It would be a pity if she didn't become a child star in the modern era. Li Zixuan knew that the girl was lying. How could there be a rat in her room? He wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. However, he couldn't resist her coaxing and pestering. He could only obediently tell her the story. Another example was one day, Lan ran over while wiping her tears. She cried and said, "Brother, Little Gray is dead. Boo-hoo, Lan is so sad." Lan wants to listen to brother's story. Boo-hoo, Little Gray was a little gray dog that Lan had raised for more than 2 years. Li Zixuan saw Lan crying so sadly. His heart was broken. He didn't care if Lan was lying or not. He told her 2 chapters of Journey to the West without hesitation. Who knew that the next day, when Li Zixuan went to the backyard to look for Lan he saw Little Gray wagging its tail and intimately biting the hem of his clothes, trying to worm its way into being friends with him. Li Zixuan, who felt that his IQ had been crushed, flew into a rage and kicked Little Gray away. Little Gray rolled on the ground and whined pitifully at him. Sigh, if this girl was in the modern era, she would definitely be a movie queen. Recalling what had happened in the past few days, Li Zixuan couldn't help but sigh. At this time, Lan came over with a smile. She shook Li Zixuan's arm intimately and said slyly, "Since Journey to the West is finished, brother can tell Lan something else. As long as you don't tell Liang Shanbua and Zhu Yingtai from last time." Li Zixuan rubbed his head in distress. He still had many stories in his mind, but he couldn't think of anything suitable for children. Suddenly, he had an idea and said to Lan, let's not tell stories today. Brother will make you something fun, okay? Lan Er's eyes lit up. She excitedly agreed in a crisp voice. Okay, okay. What is brother going to make for Lan Er? You'll know in a while. Chapter 38. Li Zishuan ran to the kitchen, and after searching for a long time, he finally found a very thick piece of wood. After examining it carefully, he realized that it was actually a yellow birch. He secretly praised his good luck. Yellow birch wood was fine and sturdy, easy to polish. It also had good grip strength and was not easily deformed. It was a good material for making skateboards. That's right, Li Zishuan wanted to make a skateboard for Lan Er. However, it was a skateboard with handles in front. This kind of skateboard had a higher safety factor. Li Zishuan carried the piece of wood with one hand and came to his small courtyard. Lan Er was still waiting for him here. Lan Er saw her brother carrying a large piece of wood over and ran forward to ask, "Brother, are you going to make a puppet for Lan Er? But what's so fun about puppets?" This little girl was still picky. Li Zishuan pinched Lan Er's porcelain doll-like face in amusement and said with a smile, "Of course it's not a puppet. What kind of skill does a puppet require?" Lan Er slapped her brother's hand away and wrinkled her little nose, saying unhappily, "Brother, your hands are so dirty." Li Zishuan took a look and realized that he had forgotten to wash his hands after picking the wood for a long time. Seeing Lan Er become a cute little cat, Li Zishuan laughed dryly. Afraid that his little sister would take revenge, he hurriedly went to the porch to make a skateboard. Li Zishuan first used the wind-chasing sword to cut a piece of wood that was about 40 centimeters long, 10 centimeters wide, and 5 centimeters thick. The wind-chasing sword could cut iron like mud and cut wood as easily as cutting tofu. Moreover, the wood that was cut out was as smooth as a mirror and did not require any additional polishing. Li Zishuan sighed inwardly. This wind-chasing sword was a divine tool for woodworking. If spiritual master Lingshu heard his current sigh, he wondered if he would climb out of his grave in anger and clean up the house. Li Zishuan cut the exterior of the skateboard, took out a ruler, measured the dimensions, and drew the central axis of the force acting on the skateboard as well as the connecting rod of the wheel. Then, he picked up the wind-chasing sword and aimed it at the connecting rod of the wheel. Circulating his true chi, the wind-chasing sword began to rapidly spin in Li Zishuan's hand. Not long after, 2 holes were drilled out from the side of the skateboard. The more Li Zishuan looked at wind-chasing sword, the more he liked it. It could be used as a saw, a chisel, and even an electric drill. It was truly a divine weapon, hee. Lan Er, Xiao He, and Xiao Shi were dumbstruck by Li Zishuan's series of miraculous operations. It was not that they had never seen carpenters before, but who else in the great Tang could be so amazing? Lan Er couldn't help but ask softly, "Brother, was your master also a carpenter in the past?" The corner of Li Zishuan's mouth twitched when he heard this. He silently mourned for his master who was in the underworld. He was the #1 expert in the Jianghu, a martial arts grandmaster, and a godlike figure. Yet, Lan Er, this little girl, called him a carpenter. Li Zishuan said unhappily, "What nonsense are you talking about? Your brother taught himself carpentry. Don't simply talk about my master." Lan Er also realized that she had misspoken. She agreed and continued to watch her brother make toys for her at the side. Li Zishuan cut 2 short sticks that were slightly longer than the width of the skateboard. After polishing them until they were extremely smooth, he inserted them into the holes that he had just drilled and used them as the wheel axles. There were no ball bearings in this era, so he could only make do with them for now. Without rubber tires, Li Zishuan could only make 2 pairs of wooden wheels and nail them onto the wheel axles. He thought to himself that he would find a blacksmith to make a cast iron one in the future. Wooden wheels were not resistant to wear. In the end, he made a T-shaped wooden pole and fixed it in front of the skateboard as a handlebar. Just like that, the first super-simplified version of the Tang Dynasty's scooter was born. "Lan Er, come here." Put your hand on this, one foot on the skateboard and the other foot on the ground. Give it a try. After putting away the tools, Li Zixuan demonstrated the movement and encouraged Lan Er to come forward and try it. Lan Er was already eager to try, but she didn't know how to play with this thing. When she heard her brother's words, she immediately couldn't wait to snatch the scooter. Following her brother's instructions, she began to slowly slide forward. The wooden scooter was indeed much more rusty than the ones made with modern technology. Li Zixuan stood at the side and could hear the rusty zhizhi friction sound when the scooter started moving. But fortunately, his wheel holes and wheel axles were polished smooth. Lan Er used a little strength and the scooter began to slide. Lan Er just stepped on the ground and the scooter slid forward. She didn't control her center of gravity, and her small body couldn't help but lean back. She couldn't help but cry out in shock. The two little maids were watching with their hearts in their throat. Li Zixuan wasn't worried. The scooter wasn't fast. Once Lan Er adjusted her center of gravity, she would be completely fine. Even if an accident happened, he was confident that he could save his little sister. Sure enough, at first, the little girl was very careful and didn't dare to step too fast. She was like a graceful lady, stepping there with small steps. After she got used to it, the little girl became bold and began to go crazy. Oh brother, look, Lan Er knows Qigong. Come and catch up. Lan Er stepped lightly and saw the scenery around her rushing back. Feeling the speed of the wind, Lan Er was extremely happy and couldn't help but cheer. Sure enough, no matter what era it was, the scooter had a fatal attraction for children. Looking at his little sister who was cheering in front of him, Li Zixuan's thoughts flew back to his previous life. At that time, the streets were filled with naughty children who rode on scooters and raced with each other. They would play for a whole day and never get tired of it. Perhaps he could give this scooter to the children of Tang Dynasty more than 1,000 years in advance. As for whether the parents of the naughty children would have a headache or not, it was none of his business. By that time, Chang'an City would be filled with naughty children riding on scooters. It was quite interesting when he thought about it. Lan Er played for a while and felt that her brother's west courtyard wasn't big enough. She stepped on the scooter and went to the front courtyard to play. Li Zixuan shook his head in amusement and followed her with Xiao He and Xiao Shi. Li Jingma went to the clothing store in the West City this morning. A few days ago, after the introduction of a few old business friends, he recruited a new shopkeeper for the clothing store. His name was Sun Huaiming, who was in his 30s. He was smart and capable, and he was also quite honest. Today, Li Jingma went to take a look at the business situation of the clothing store and found that Sun Huaiming was extremely smart. He had introduced many new ready-to-wear styles, which were very popular. In just a few days, the business situation of the clothing store was obviously much better than before. Li Jingma was in a very good mood after reading it. He gave Sun Huaiming some words of encouragement before returning. As soon as he entered the house, he saw his daughter stepping on a strange wooden board and rushing toward him. Lan Er saw her father at the door and was overjoyed. She wanted to show her father her new toy immediately, so she shouted happily, "Daddy, Daddy, look, Lan Er knows Qigong." As she spoke, she stepped hard on the scooter and rushed toward Li Jingma. The speed of the scooter was getting faster and faster, and she was getting closer and closer to Li Jingma. Ah! After a while, Lan Er screamed. The little girl only cared about increasing her speed and was too fast. Now it was too late to slow down. She couldn't help but be frightened. Li Jingma also noticed the danger at this moment. He could avoid being hit, but behind him was the door of the residence. If Lan Er crashed into it, her head would be broken and she would bleed. He couldn't bear to see his beloved daughter get hurt. Li Jingma instantly made a decision. He stood in place and waited for his daughter to crash into him. However, with his old arms and legs, he reckoned that he wouldn't be able to get out of bed for 2 months after being hit. He just didn't know where Lan Er got this thing from. When he returned, he must punish the servants in the residence. How could they let Lan play with such a dangerous thing? Seeing that she was about to bump into her father, Lan-er's little face flushed red with anxiety. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She regretted her earlier arrogance. Her father was so good to her, she couldn't bear to see him get hurt. Seeing that she was about to touch her father, Lan suddenly felt her vision blur. Then, she was carried up into the sky. She turned her head and saw that her brother had carried her and the scooter. The little girl understood that she was saved. Her father didn't have to get hurt because of her. She was very excited. She hugged her brother tightly and whispered, "Thank you, brother." Chapter 39. In the front hall of the Li residence. You stinking brat. You don't do proper work all day long. You're always messing around with messy things. How can you let Lan play with such dangerous things? Li Jingma paced back and forth, pointing at Li Zishuan's nose as he scolded him. Today's matter was too dangerous. Father, it was Lan who wanted to play. It has nothing to do with brother, Lan said weakly as she tugged at her father's sleeve when she saw her father scolding her brother. I haven't even scolded you yet. You're a girl, but you're always like a wild brat, following your brother around. You haven't been going to your mother's place to learn how to be a maid recently. Li Jingma changed his target when he heard Lan-er's words. Lan-er's eyes were red from her father's scolding, and tears were about to fall. She tugged at her brother's hand, lowered her head, and bit her lip, not daring to say anything. She also felt that she was in the wrong today. Li Zishuan couldn't stand it anymore. He reached out and hugged the pitiful Lan, saying to his father, "Father, Lan is still young. If she wants to play, let her play. Why do you have to force her to learn this and that? Our family has so much money. Do you think we'll be short of food for Lan in the future?" Although Li Jingma didn't expect his son and daughter to learn how to earn money for the family, when he heard Li Zishuan speak so matter-of-factly, as if all the money in the family was earned by him, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. After calming down, he said, he calmed down and calmed himself down. "So what if the family has so much money? Isn't it earned by your father? Why? Do you want to stay at home for the rest of your life? Besides, Lan is almost 7 years old. If she doesn't learn how to be a maid, how can she get married in the future?" Li Zishuan was speechless. Lan wasn't even 7 years old. His father was thinking so far ahead. Although he knew that his father was angry, Li Zishuan was still a little unhappy. "Father, I won't stay at home and wait for death. Even if Lan doesn't learn anything and can't get married, I can still earn money to support her for the rest of her life. My sister can't be wronged by anyone. Not only Lan but I can also rely on my own abilities to earn money for my parents' retirement." After saying that, he looked at the dumbfounded old man Li with an arrogant expression. His eyes seemed to say, "Yes, you didn't hear me wrong. I want to earn my own money." Lan's heart was filled with sweetness when she heard her brother speak up for her. She hugged her brother's arm tightly and refused to let go. She thought to herself, "Brother is so good, even better than Daddy." Li Jingma stared blankly for a moment. After a moment of calmness, he stepped forward and placed his hand on Li Zishuan's forehead. He asked worriedly, "Xian, you don't have a fever, do you?" "What? My Xian, you're sick?" A cry of surprise came from outside the door. Then, Mrs. Li Zishuan rushed to the front of Li Zishuan like a gust of wind. She pulled him over and looked at him carefully. It turned out that when Xiao He saw the young master and young miss being scolded in the front hall, she hurriedly ran to the eastern courtyard to ask for help. The servants of the Li family all knew that the master was afraid of the madam. Li Zishuan's face was filled with black lines as he slapped his father's hand away from his forehead. He looked at Mrs. Li and said, "Mother, Xian is fine. Don't worry." He then turned around and said seriously to his father, "Father, I was serious about what I said just now. I don't want to always stay at home and live off my parents. I also want to do some things myself so that I can take care of father and mother in the future. I know that father doesn't believe in my abilities, but wasn't the chicken I ate previously a proof? Just based on that alone, the Drunken Immortal restaurant's profits should be more than 1,000 strings of coins, right? Li Zishuan really wanted to open a small shop and sell the things in his mind to the people of Great Tang. Not only could he earn money, he could also find something for himself to do. Otherwise, he would feel embarrassed if he stayed at home and lived off his parents every day. After all, the soul in this body was 25 years old. When Li Jingma heard this, he swallowed back the words he wanted to say. The profits the Drunken Immortal restaurant had brought in for the past half a month were more than 1,000 strings of coins. A few days ago, he heard from shopkeeper Lu that the Drunken Immortal restaurant had increased the daily supply of Drunken Immortal restaurant under the strong demands of the customers. There were too many high officials and dignitaries in Chang'an City. Blindly limiting the supply would offend many people for no reason. It was really not worth it. Later on, Li Jingma simply decided not to limit the quantity of Drunken Immortal restaurant and even launched a takeout service. As a result, the sales of Drunken Immortal restaurant increased dramatically. In less than half a month, the profits were close to 4,000 strings of coins. Even though Li Jingma had done business for decades and had seen hundreds of thousands of strings of coins, he was still shocked by the profits from Drunken Immortal restaurant. When he heard Li Zishuan's words, Li Jingma's heart wavered. Just as he was about to agree, he suddenly felt a familiar pain in his waist. I say, you old fart. So you want to force Xian to go out and earn money. What's the point of keeping so much money in our family? Are you going to bring it into the grave? Since you don't want to see me and my son, then I'll go back to my parents' home with Xian. Mrs. Li listened to the conversation and immediately understood what they were arguing about. She was instantly angry. Old man Li grimaced in pain from being choked. He was full of grief and indignation, thinking that this woman was unreasonable. He quickly explained, "SSS, madam, it's not what you think. Let go first." Mrs. Li was not satisfied. She really loved her son. At this time, seeing that Li Jingma seemed to want to drive her son out of the house and rely on himself, Mrs. Li could not bear it. Her eyes turned red with anger and the strength in her hands increased. Old man Li's face gradually turned from red to purple. Old man Li felt very wronged at this moment, but his wife did not give him a chance to explain. He immediately sent a signal for help to his son with his eyes. Li Zishuan was a little amused. He went forward and pulled his mother away, saying, "Mother, it's not what you think. Your son wants to do something. I have nothing to do at home every day, so I might as well do something to earn some money. Your son can't stay at home every day, can he?" Mrs. Li glared at him and said, "Why can't you stay at home? Didn't your father make so much money for you to spend? Why don't you stay at home with your mother every day?" Then she glared at Old Man Li fiercely. If he dared to say no at this moment, he would definitely have to sleep in the study at night. Of course, Old Man Li did not dare to say no. At this moment, he turned his face to the side and rubbed his old waist to recover from his injury. Li Zishuan did not know whether to laugh or cry. Who would encourage their child to be a member of the family? However, he was still a little touched in his heart. "Mother, Master taught me a lot of things when he was alive, and I still want to carry it forward. Besides, I can't rely on you for the rest of my life. Father is old. I want to grow up as soon as possible so that you can enjoy a happy life." Hearing their son's sincerity, the two old people were relieved. Their son had grown up and knew how to be filial to his parents. For parents in the world, there was nothing happier than this. Mrs. Li looked at her son with a face full of love and said, "Since Xian wants to do something, Mother will support you. If you need anything, you must tell me. Do you hear me?" Li Zishuan hurriedly nodded in agreement. He turned around and said to Li Jingma, "Father, I can definitely build an even bigger business empire." Li Jingma looked at his son's confident face and stroked his beard in relief. He said, "Since Xian is so confident, then go ahead and do it." Li Zishuan agreed. Lan interrupted, "Lan also wants to help Big Brother do big things. Lan doesn't want to be paid." Everyone was amused by Lan innocent words. Li Zishuan smiled and rubbed Lan head. He wanted to pull Lan out. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. He stopped in his tracks and walked back to Li Jingma, who was full of gratification, and said, "Father, since I want to start my own business and open a shop, you can't not give me the capital, right?" Li Jingma said in a muffled voice, "Then how much do you want?" Li Zishuan smiled and probed, "It's not much. Just give me half a month's profit from the Drunken Immortal Restaurant's chicken. It'll be 1,000 strings. Is that okay?" When Li Jingma heard this, his eyes lit up. This little brat probably thought that the chicken he was eating was still limited to 200 servings a day. He pretended to be generous and said, "How can 1,000 strings be enough? Father will give you 2,000 strings as the initial capital." Li Zishuan was overjoyed. His father was still quite generous. He hurriedly thanked his father and left with Lan. Seeing his son's happy face and thinking that he had taken advantage of him, Li Jingma couldn't help but laugh dryly in his heart. Hee, old ginger is still spicier. Chapter 40. Li Zishuan was very happy to receive 2,000 strings of cash from his father. Don't underestimate this 2,000 strings of cash. According to the current purchasing power, it was almost equivalent to hundreds of thousands of yuan in the future. Li Zishuan had to plan his new shop well, and what he could sell. First of all, he needed to build a technical team. As his shop expanded in the future, he would need to make more and more new things. Of course, he couldn't do everything himself. In some aspects, he was just a theorist. In practice, he was not as good as today's craftsmen. Don't underestimate the wisdom of the ancients. They only lacked suitable guidance. They were not as stupid as modern people. Especially before the Ming and Qing dynasties, when the ancients' thinking was not restricted, a large number of creative wise people emerged in the land of China. Li Zishuan had more than 1,000 years of knowledge. Coupled with the skilled skills of the Tang workers, he believed that he could bring a lot of new things to the Tang dynasty. Since he had come to this flourishing age, why not leave his mark in history? Li Zishuan wanted to make the Tang dynasty, which was already at the top of the world, even more ahead of the world. As he thought about it, Li Zishuan felt a surge of emotions. In the past, when he read history books, he could only be a bystander. But now, he was a participant in the construction of this prosperous era. But where could he find a suitable craftsman? First of all, the craftsmen must have a good character. They must be honest and not cunning. Li Zishuan did not want the craftsmen he had painstakingly trained to betray him in the end. Then, of course, the higher the craftsman's skills, the easier it would be. But where could he find a craftsman who could meet these two requirements at the same time? Li Zishuan had only been in the Tang dynasty for half a month, and his social circle was not big. It seemed that he had to trouble his father to find a craftsman. In his memory, his father could travel all over the country and did business for decades. He was involved in various industries such as clothing, catering, cosmetics, and so on. His father would definitely be able to find a satisfactory craftsman for him. Li Zishuan, who had made up his mind, was about to look for his father to ask for the girl when he saw Xiao He running over while lifting her skirt. She said, "Young master, Li Gaoming, who was eavesdropping on journey to the west behind us last time, is here. He is serving tea in the front hall." Previously, when he ate with Li Chengxian at the Drunken Immortal restaurant, Xiao He and Xiao Shi did not go. Therefore, Xiao He did not know that Li Gaoming was the crown prince. Right now, in the little girl's impression, Li Gaoming was still a little thief who eavesdropped on stories. Li Zixuan stared blankly. Now that he knew that Li Gaoming was Li Chengqian, he naturally didn't find it strange that Li Gaoming could find his residence. He was only curious. What was the crown prince doing here? At this time, Lan Er asked, Sister Xiaohe, didn't Sister Lizzie come with him? Xiaohe shook her head and said, no. Li Zixuan nodded and said to Xiaohe with a smile, Xiaohe, don't be rude when you see Li Gaoming in the future. He is actually the crown prince of the Tang Empire, Li Chengqian. Xiaohe opened her mouth wide in shock. Her brain couldn't wrap itself around it for a moment, and she was stunned on the spot. Li Zixuan didn't care about the dumbfounded Xiaohe anymore. He pulled Lan Er and walked towards the front hall with some amusement. Li Chengqian was drinking tea in the front hall when he heard footsteps getting closer and closer to him. He put down the teacup and looked outside the door. After Li Zixuan entered the door, he bowed slightly and cupped his hands in greeting. Greetings, Your Highness. He didn't plan to hide it and directly put it out in the open. He wasn't good at scheming at all. In his previous life, whenever he saw his girlfriend watching a palace drama, he would have a headache. He really wasn't cut out for scheming. Therefore, he might as well put it out in the open today and see how Li Chengqian would react. Then, he would decide whether this friend was worth making or not. Li Chengqian was obviously stunned for a moment. After thinking for a while, he understood what was going on. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. It seems that Brother Chonyo has already told you. Why, now that Brother Zixuan knows my identity, you don't want to make friends with Gaoming. After saying this, a trace of loneliness flashed across his face. He was only a child who grew up in the palace. When he was young, he was bullied by his uncle's children. At that time, his father was hiding his strength and biding his time. No one supported him, and he didn't have a single friend. When his father killed his uncles, imprisoned his grandfather, and became the emperor, those who had bullied him before and those who hadn't bullied him before were all killed by his father. At that time, he didn't feel the joy of revenge, only loneliness. He didn't want to kill them. He only wanted to beat them up to vent his anger. When he became the crown prince, he welcomed even more loneliness. He had to always maintain a calm smile. Those young people of the same age as him in Chang, an city either deliberately kept a distance from him, like Qing Chumo, or deliberately got close to him, wanting to use his identity to gain some benefit. Only in the dead of night would Li Chengqian look at the high palace wall alone, fantasizing about how wonderful the outside world was. Not long ago, when he went out of the palace with Changle's younger sister, he met Li Zixuan, heard the interesting story, and ate the interesting food. From the bottom of his heart, Li Chengqian was very envious of Li Zixuan's free and real life. He really wanted to make such a friend. He didn't expect that Qing Chumo had told Li Zixuan his true identity so early. Perhaps Qing Chumo had also warned Li Zixuan to keep a distance from him. Thinking of this, a trace of disappointment flashed across Li Chengqian's eyes. As expected, being in the royal family, one was destined to be alone. Li Zixuan had been carefully observing Li Chengqian's expression. At this moment, he saw that Li Chengqian's words were sincere, and the loneliness and disappointment in his expression didn't seem to be fake. He was relieved and thought that Li Chengqian's nature was not bad. He could make friends with him. Maybe under his influence, he wouldn't go on the road of no return. He smiled at Li Chengqian and said, I, Li Zixuan, have always made friends based on the person, not the identity. But if someone talks about the identity with me, then I will keep a distance from him. Li Chengqian thought for a moment and understood the meaning of Li Zixuan's words. He said happily, That's great. I have the same idea. The two looked at each other and smiled. Li Chengqian said again, Since you already know my identity, I won't call you a loner in the future. Let's call each other brothers to avoid being estranged. Li Zixuan didn't answer him. He smiled and asked, "Why did Gao Ming come here today?" Since his identity had been made clear, Li Chengqian didn't need to deliberately hide anything. He said, "Sister Changel has been studying the palace rites in the palace recently. She feels bored, so she asked me to come here and listen to 2 stories. Then I'll tell them to her when I go back. I wonder if Brother Zishuan is willing?" In fact, Li Chengqian had always wanted to listen to stories, but as the crown prince, he couldn't leave the palace frequently. This time, he found an excuse to leave the palace after getting his mother's permission. Li Zishuan understood his purpose for coming. He couldn't help but curse silently. This crown prince was really idle. He specially left the palace to listen to stories. Hey! Chapter 41. Looking at Li Chengqian's expectant face, Li Zishuan smiled and said, "If Gao Ming wants to hear a story, it's useless for you to look for me. You have to look for Lan." Hearing this, Li Chengqian couldn't wrap his head around it. He looked at Lan in confusion. At this time, Lan smiled proudly and said, "Brother has already told Lan the whole journey to the west. Lan has recorded it in the booklet. If Brother Gao Ming wants it, you have to give me a story in exchange." Hearing Lan request, Li Chengqian suddenly looked embarrassed. If he could tell stories, why would Changel ask him to come over and steal the story? After searching his mind for a long time, he really couldn't find a story that could be exchanged. Li Chengqian was in a dilemma. "Sister Lan can I exchange it with something else? For example, how about Brother Gao Ming exchange it with 5 strings of cash?" As Li Chengqian spoke, he gestured 5 with his hand. He felt a little distressed. 5 strings of cash for a booklet was a little expensive in his opinion. Although he was the crown prince, his daily expenses weren't abundant. Even his father had been scrimping and saving. He couldn't even bear to repair the palace, let alone him. However, Li Chengqian didn't know that Lan didn't care about 5 strings of cash. The little girl's concept of money was still relatively vague. Lan shook her head and said, "Lan doesn't want money." "Well, let Lan think about what to do." Then, Lan tilted her head and rolled her eyes. Suddenly, she smiled slyly and said, "Hee, Brother Gao Ming, Lan will lend Journey to the West to you today, but you have to agree to a request of Lan in exchange. Lan hasn't thought of the specific request yet. Lan will tell you when she thinks of it. How about it?" Li Chengqian was dumbfounded. This was more expensive than 5 strings of cash. As the crown prince of the Tang Empire, how could he casually agree to other people's requests? Li Zishuan couldn't stand it anymore and reprimanded slightly, "Lan don't mess around. Quickly go and bring that booklet to Gao Ming." Lan was a little disappointed, and could only agree in a muffled voice. Then, she pouted and thought to herself, "This big Brother Gao Ming is really stingy." No matter how stupid Li Chengqian was, he would still be able to tell what that expression, that gaze, meant. A dignified empire's heir apparent was actually being looked down upon by a little girl. At this moment, Li Chengqian was a bit overwhelmed and hurriedly said, "All right, Lan Big Brother Gao Ming agrees to exchange with you, but your request must not violate the laws of the empire." Lan was still disappointed. When she heard this, she immediately said happily, "All right, Lan will go and get Journey to the West now." After saying that, in order to save time, Lan specially took the scooter and rode it to the backyard like a gust of wind. Li Zishuan saw that Lan could move so quickly by stepping on a strange wooden board. He couldn't help but point at the scooter in surprise and say to Li Zishuan, What is this?" Li Chengqian was a bit confused. It was fine that Li Zishuan's family was wealthier than his, but why did he have these strange things that even the imperial palace didn't have? Li Zishuan smiled and explained, "This is a scooter. I made it for Lan to play with when I was bored." "Why? Is Gao Ming interested in this?" Li Chengqian was a bit embarrassed for making a fuss over nothing and said, "No, I was just wondering if I could make one for Sister Changle. Changle's health has always been poor. The imperial physician said that she can't do excessive exercise, but this scooter should be quite suitable for her. Actually, it's quite suitable for me. I have to find an opportunity to let the supervisor make a few more so that I can play with them when there's no one around," Li Chengqian added in his heart. After all, he was only a 10-year-old child. Even if the children of the imperial family matured early, they still had a child's heart. It was reasonable for him to be curious about this scooter. When Li Zixuan heard this, he couldn't help but think of that beautiful girl with a kind of morbid beauty and a dignified beauty that didn't belong to her age. Suddenly, he had an idea. He turned his head and said to Li Chengqian, "Don't worry. Gao Ming, if this scooter were to be sold, would it be a big seller?" Li Chengqian answered without thinking, "Of course it would be a big seller." Li Zixuan nodded and said, "Since Gao Ming thinks so highly of it, I have a business here. I don't know if you would be interested." Li Chengqian's eyes lit up. "Brother Zixuan, could it be that you want to sell this scooter?" Li Zixuan nodded and said, "I plan to open a shop that specializes in selling this kind of rare item. I still have a lot of methods for this kind of rare item in my mind. In the future, there will be more and more products. I wonder if Gao Ming is willing to cooperate with me?" "Of course I'm willing," Li Chengqian quickly responded. This was a good thing that fell from the sky. Unlike Li Zixuan, Li Chengqian knew the profits of the chicken. He gnawed on like the back of his hand. Even his father was a little jealous of the profits. Now that Li Zixuan wanted to launch a new product and wanted to cooperate with him, only a fool wouldn't be willing. However, Li Chengqian thought about it and hesitated. "But how do we cooperate? To be honest, the East Palace isn't as rich as your family." Li Zixuan shook his head and said with a smile, "There's no need for Gao Ming to pay a lot of money. I'll use 2,000 strings of cash and my skills to get 70% of the shares." "Gao Ming, you use 200 strings of cash, and help me recruit a few skilled craftsmen to get the remaining 30%. How about it?" Pulling Li Chengqian into the partnership was mainly because he was afraid that his profits would increase in the future and easily attract the covetous eyes of his peers. With Li Chengqian, the most powerful second-generation official of the Tang Dynasty, protecting him, his shop would have a lot less trouble in the future. Hearing this, Li Chengqian thought about it. This was a great bargain for him. He said happily, "Then I'll thank Brother Zixuan. I'll send someone to send the 200 strings of cash over tomorrow." He thought that if he squeezed around, he should be able to gather 200 strings of cash. He wanted to get this done as soon as possible. The East Palace was also short of money. "As for the craftsman, I know a very interesting person. I'll introduce him to Brother Zixuan another day," Li Chengqian added. Li Zixuan was a little curious and said, "Since even Gao Ming says that person is interesting, I can't wait to meet him." Li Chengqian was quite confident in that person. He smiled and said, "Brother Zixuan, don't worry. That person will definitely meet your standard." At this moment, the two of them saw Lan coming over on a scooter with a booklet in her hand. With the previous experience of being at a disadvantage, Lan stopped accelerating when she was not far from the two. She just let the scooter move over according to inertia. Lan came in front of them and handed the booklet to Li Chengqian. She said, "It took Lan a long time to finish writing this. Brother Gao Ming, remember to get someone to copy it and return the booklet to Lan." Li Chengqian naturally agreed and eagerly took the booklet. He was very happy and couldn't wait to finish reading the booklet. Li Zixuan saw that it was still early and suggested, "There's no time like the present. It just so happens that Gao Ming is here today. Why don't we go to the East Market and choose a shop?" He chose to open a shop in the East Market mainly because it was close to home and the palace. Although the West Market was bustling, it was too far away. It was also Li Qingqian's first time opening a shop. He found it quite novel. He looked at the time. It was indeed early. Since he had taken a day off from his mother, it would be a waste to return to the palace so early. Thinking of this, Li Qingqian eagerly said, "Of course. Let's go now." Lan Er hurriedly said, "Lan Er wants to go too." Just like that, the four of them went out and walked towards the East Market. The other person was Steward Wang. Li Zishuan didn't know the market and wasn't good at bargaining, so he brought Steward Wang along. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.